Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to another Friday, another episode of Heavy Metallurgy, number 193. I'm Marty. I'm one of your hosts. Good to see you. Hope you're all having a decent week. To our friends out in LA, hope you're doing okay.
Safe. Yeah.
Safe and doing well. Alan, how are you?
Snow!
You guys don't know what snow is.
On this side of the country, everyone's freaking out with all kinds of wintry weather. We only got a little bit here. It's not too bad enough. Stuff was shut down for the day, but we're not buried in. We're not going to have to go full Donner Party on folks or anything like that. Just enough to get outside and have some fun with the kid, snowballs and all that kind of good stuff. So yeah, not so bad there. Marty, how are things up your way?
Doing good. There's one thing we do have to report here. This guy right here, our friend Frosty, otherwise known as Daryl, here in our chat, always with us all the time. Today's his birthday, so everybody wish Celtic Frosty a birthday in the chat. Don't ask him how many trips to the spanking machine he went to today, but it's a couple. And so happy birthday, Daryl. Hope you're having a great one.
Cheers, Frosty. Happy birthday, man.
Yeah, things are good here. Weather is, decent. Some snow, warms up, a little bit of rain, a little bit of snow. It's back and forth. But otherwise, business as usual. But we have an awesome guest today that we should probably bring out, unless there's anything else you want to bring to the table before we do so.
I don't think so. It's still very early in the year. New releases haven't quite started to trickle out just yet. There's a little bit more starting to happen in the next week or so. But yeah, I think we are ready to bring our much anticipated and in-demand guest on out here.
Hell yes. Hunter Ginn, welcome back to the show. Good to see you. How are you?
Good to be here. Thank you, guys.
Oh yeah, the Halo effect dropped today. It did drop today. It's good. It's good.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's funny that I am a guest on 193. We're missing an extra 9. The last time I was on here, it was to discuss all the great records of 1993.
That is crazy.
It's not a coincidence either. We've already got you booked for episode 2112 as well, just as a kind of early heads up.
I can't wait.
Right.
We may have to start doing these weekly to get there in a reasonable amount of time, or bi-weekly or tri-weekly or something. But
we're going to have to get your late night tolerance up to speed too, so you can actually, so you're ready. So by the time we hit 2112, you'll be like, "Hey guys, what's going on?"
Yeah,
at midnight.
Well, I'll be dead, so I don't think it'll matter. We just sleep all day.
Yeah,
I'm like, fuck it, I'm ready.
Marty, is necromancy a crime if you do it across state lines? I'm asking for a friend.
I think anything's legal in the South if you do it out in the woods, isn't it?
It's true.
You're not wrong.
The misuse of livestock. Yeah.
It's all there.
Necromancy.
Yep.
Holy cow.
Yep.
Well, Hunter, since we've seen you last, what has been going on in your world? I know things have been busy. You've been doing some stuff.
A lot. Yeah. So I think Agalloch went to Australia. Since I saw
you think you were there, right? Okay.
I think since I saw you last.
Yeah.
Yes, last time I think you were getting ready.
You're getting ready. Yep.
Yeah. But
so how was it?
Yeah, that was awesome. Awesome. It's a great trip. The Gorging Shade record has come out. Really excited about that. The response to it's been great. Plague Psalm, the first full length came out on Crucial Blast. I think the next Sculptured record's almost there. Cool. I recorded the drums for the next Dolvin record, which is Nick Woos's acoustic project, and Jason Walton plays bass, and Jory Appadell from Anephrons sings on it. Let's see. Actually wrote this down because
you entered the Agalloch hemisphere, and your workload has increased by 3 times at least.
It has. Yeah. I'm in, I think, 4 bands with Jason Walton alone. The Canvas Boys, we've got a new sort of band. It's the 4 of us, as it always is. But Nathan, so Gail wrote all the Gorging Shade stuff. Nathan's written a death metal record. The band tentatively is called Festerium. It's very Carcass, Bolt Thrower inspired death metal.
Cool.
Let's see what else. I think that's about all I have to report.
Yeah. You also had Deserts of Hex #2 come out.
Yeah, Deserts of Hex #2 is out. Almost sold out of that. That's
Nice.
exciting. And Jeff and I will be back on the Radical Research train, I think, pretty shortly. We're looking forward to that. Be some
sure.
normalcy.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, everybody's looking forward to that. But yeah, we understand it'll happen when you all are ready for it to happen.
Funny in our topic tonight, because the last thing we did, two things, but one of the last things we did before the fire that's out now was Autopsy 0.5. So it's kind of weird. Like the next thing that I'm talking about is Autopsy. So there's some continuity there. But
right,
kind of cool.
Yeah, and that might be where, I mean, the reason we kind of invited you for this one was that, yeah, I remember, listening to Radical Research, and you mentioned that Autopsy was a band you ranked pretty high. That it was kind of a big deal for you.
Very special band for me.
Yeah, which is really, really cool. And I would not have guessed that with 50 guesses.
I would have. I would. Yeah, because Alan's like Hunter's into. I'm like, are you sure?
I think so. I'm not.
I mean, he likes cool, gross underground stuff, but I don't. I'm a little surprised. But
yeah, no, Autopsy's been a really special band for me for a very long time.
Yeah. So, what was your introduction to Autopsy? How does a guy who's obviously tied into a lot of cool progressive projects, and very polished drummer. What's the appeal for Autopsy? What makes them so endearing to you?
Well, I got into them. I can tell you my origin story with Autopsy. Mm-hmm. I used to watch Headbangers Ball, as most people did back in the early 90s, and Ricky Rackman was like off one week, which was not a bad thing. However, his replacement was Lon Friend, which was a bad thing. Or
sometimes it was Adam Curry. Do you remember when he put on that bedazzled fucking leather jacket? Adam Curry here. I'm like, what is happening? Yeah.
But he had Mike Gitter come on and talk about actual underground metal that was going on at the time, and Gitter talked about Autopsy and said it was like really creepy funereal death metal, and that just sounded cool to me. I'd gotten into Cathedral's Forest of Equilibrium not too long before that, and had a kind of a taste for the slower, darker stuff. And I ended up getting Mental Funeral, and it just stuck with me. The appeal is that they're a death metal band that behaves like a rock and roll band. They're like if Black Sabbath played death metal, it's very live. It's very intuitive. It's, 3 or 4 guys that are all in the same room, sort of responding to each other.
Yep.
I love Chris Reifert's vocals. I think they're some of the most otherworldly, weird death metal vocals ever. Big fan.
And as a drummer too, as you being a drummer, not me. I could play the thrash beat and the funky white boy beat. Those are the only 2 beats in my repertoire. But
so Nathan too. I mean, whenever we would I'd go to use the bathroom and I'd hear my drums.
Boom,
and
boom, boom.
And he's got both of those. Yeah.
But I was listening, intently to Autopsy, and not only is he singing, but the drums he's playing, very organic style, and he does like this double kick snare. I don't know what the hell it's called. It sounds like a paradiddle type, skip into a roll. I don't know, but it's like so him. You hear it.
Yep.
It's like a double kick. It's like a really easy pattern, and he throws like a double kick or a double snare thing, and it's like in a weird place. And it's like, man, that feel is so fucking Autopsy all the way right to the core. It's like, he has a different ear.
A bunch of weird triplet figures, and just he's got a really Bill Ward, Black Sabbath kind of a vibe about him. Yeah, I just love his playing. I mean, it's loose, but it's also weirdly nuanced. I think when I first heard him, I was listening to, Sean Reiner and Steve Flynn and all these, really, really advanced players. And I thought it was kind of primitive. But the older I got, and probably, the more I learned about the drums, the more I heard all the weird kind of intricacies in his playing. I think he's a really talented drummer.
He is.
And I don't think there's anybody else that. Well, Marty, it's like, to your point, it's like what you were saying. It's him. It sounds like Autopsy. You can shit on Lars Ulrich all you want to, but like those first 4 Metallica records would not sound like that were it not for him.
Same with Chris Witchhunter from Sodom.
Yep.
That guy would throw a roll in the middle of a phrase instead of the end, or it was like, okay, in the middle of the verse, here's this big ass roll. It's like, okay, not supposed to be there. The accent's on the end, but it was just him,
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that was a lot of the appeal of Autopsy to many folks too. Like you said, with Reifert being a different kind of player than all the fancier guys you were listening to at the time in other bands. That Autopsy overall was kind of the same way. That when a lot of death metal bands were starting to really stretch their wings, incorporate more influences, go in different directions, Autopsy went in exactly in the opposite direction.
Yeah, they doubled down.
They're like, let's just make this like sludgy and Sabbathy and knuckle dragging as we can.
Mm-hmm.
That's where we're going to keep it. Everyone else, cynic, death, y'all atheists, y'all have fun doing your thing, but we're just not going down that path. And I think it always helped. I think there was a big chunk of the fan base that really appreciated the fact that they didn't follow the same trajectory, even though those other bands, of course, are great and that's great material. Autopsy did their own thing.
I think that Chuck and Chris remained friendly, until the end of Chuck's life, but I wonder what Chris was thinking about, Scream Bloody Gore versus individual thought patterns and how those, those two paths diverged.
You know what? I get the feeling that, thanks, Ian, by the way. Thank you so much for your contribution.
Thank you so much.
I think Chris I think he likes things raw and dirty, but I also think I think he likes Rush. I think he likes stuff like that. So I think he's a progressive guy at heart as well. So I don't know. It's hard to say, but yes, it's funny to think that a guy from all the way out in California and a guy from Florida got together on one of the most influential death metal albums ever. I mean, that's where, Chris is. I'd have to look at the dates, but I think that predates anything Autopsy did.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, it did.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. And the mysterious John Hand. lost to obscurity.
Yeah. Do y'all think that, we mentioned a moment ago with Autopsy kind of following their own path, very different from like the Florida and even New York scenes. Do you think Autopsy being in California contributed to that? Because you don't really think of California as like, a death metal epicenter in the late 80s. You think Florida, you think New York, but Autopsy were, just, really far removed geographically from those areas. It was that, but they obviously had connections, like you just said, he, played, with those guys, and stuff.
Yeah.
Was it a matter of geography that helped keep them with a more distinct sound, or just other influences?
Interesting question. But I mean, even within the band, they had, connections to Hex.
Clint Bauer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting question, if being isolated just did that for him.
But I was looking at the Wikipedia and it doesn't say they're from Antioch, which I thought they were, but they're not. Sadist was, but they were real close with the Sadist guys. I mean, Steve DeGorgio played on the first album and the Fiend for Blood EP. And they're a California band. I'm thinking it's somewhat close to the Bay Area, that it doesn't have any ties to the Bay Area sound. It doesn't sound like it came from Bay Area thrash. Mm-hmm. You mentioned rock. I mean, I've said on here before, the first album in particular, it sounds like a stoner doom / stoner rock mixed with punk, mixed with, death metal. And that's what makes it so cool. It gives it such a unique flavor. Back when death metal bands, They had to eke out their own identity, and they did. And the thing of it is, they found that formula early, and they have stuck with it, live or die, for the whole career. I mean, it's got a little more refined, a little more, a little less sloppy at times, but they still bring out the slop too when the song needs it. I don't think that's an accident. I think that's on purpose, you know?
Yeah.
Anyway, I think I got off topic there. Oh, we're talking about the
No, it's all good.
the area.
No, I don't think so at all.
Okay. What do you think, Alan? What was your first connection with Autopsy?
With Autopsy, I got into them through tape trading. Somebody, and I have no idea who or exactly when, but just in one of those, big tape trades that we all used to do constantly, somebody sent me, I'm pretty sure it was Severed Survival on one side and Mental Funeral on the other side of just, your standard, 90-minute TDK kind of tape. I feel like there may have been a few tracks also from the Retribution for the Dead EP sandwiched in there somehow. So maybe it was like a 120-minute tape to get all that crammed in there. So yeah, I was, it showed up in a tape trade, played them both. Like, these are good. I definitely had a favorite of the two that we'll talk about. We'll get to that in a little bit. But after that, it was also, though, a band I sort of never followed up on for a long time. Liked those two albums, but then when I looked at others in the store, it was the mid-90s period, and we'll talk about those albums too. But looking at those on the record shelf, neither of them really appealed to me very much. It's like, I don't think I want to buy that one or that one. So, and then of course, the band, they were, as death metal bands went, they kind of split and left the scene relatively early, and it was a while before they came back. When they came back on the scene in 2010, I completely missed it. I was paying no attention to death metal at the time. I was in the process, trying to buy a house, trying to work at my first big boy job. I really had gone down the rabbit hole of, picking up, a lot of, 80s heavy metal stuff that I had missed and just never been able to afford and stuff. So, my head was stuck in music, from the 80s at the time. And it didn't really register. Folks like, Autopsy's back. And I'm sure I heard about it and read a little bit about it, but it went right in one ear and out the other. So it was a while before, I started picking up any of the sort of reunion era type material and checking that out and realizing that, a lot of this is actually pretty good too. So that was it for me. For a long time, it was just those first two albums, and Retribution for the Dead were the only Autopsy I checked out for the longest time. Marty, what is your secret origin regarding Autopsy?
Well, I remember it was at a record store in Grand Rapids, Michigan called Vinyl Solution, which is, hindsight, a horrible name for a record store, but at the time you didn't think anything about it. They had a humongous tape section, tapes, CDs upstairs, vinyl downstairs. Just going through the tapes. I was still a tape guy at that point. I was still in high school. And they had Retribution for the Dead cassette and Severed Survival cassette. Retribution for the Dead looked like a different band. That painted album cover with the tree and the landscape and the Autopsy up in the tree branches. And so I was gravitated to, this cover. And I'm like, okay, it's on Peaceville. I know what that label is. There's some other bands in my collection. So I just bought it. It's what you did. That was our internet back then for the kids in the chat, if there are any. You looked at what label was it on? In magazines, what shirts were the guys wearing? Oh, that's your Google. Oh, Ventor from Creator's wearing a Soothsayer shirt. I better check out Soothsayer. Stuff like that. So
you go through the thanks list and every band name that sounds cool, you try to follow up with. Yep.
Well, Autopsy was kind of a blind buy in every aspect for me. So yeah, and honestly, when I put it on for the first time, it wasn't what I was expecting. I was so new into the death metal thing. I was still a little unsure what was up, and I don't think I liked it very well. I was like, I just don't get this. This is a little too, wow. Guy sounds like he's puking. It just is slow. It's slower. Where's the speed? I was a thrash kid getting into death metal, and they were the true essence of death metal, and they had the punk thing going on in it as well. And I didn't get it at first. Like anything extreme that was presented to me back in the day, like Metallica, the first time I heard Fight Fire with Fire, I'm like, this sucks. What is this crap? You know, he's hollering and screaming, and 2 weeks later, I love it. I can't get enough of it. My first reaction is always to dislike it. It must be my Finnish disposition. I don't know, but
No,
yeah,
that's a band name.
Finnish disposition.
Yeah.
Hey, you want to get in another band, Greg? We can do that.
Why not?
Well, why not? Yeah.
Hunter, you should be warned ahead of time. It's going to be a Halloween tribute band.
I'm fine with that.
Okay, just making sure we're all on the same page.
Yep.
When I wound up in the hospital, gosh, I guess about 4 years ago, and Marty sends me an email and says, just listen to a bunch of Kai Hansen. You'll get better.
And it worked, obviously.
Obviously, here I am.
Lay your hands on the pumpkin, son, and you shall be healed.
That means different things in different parts of the world too. By
Yeah,
the
it
way,
does. Yeah.
Yeah, say that to the wrong person, and you will be reported to HR.
True.
Yeah.
So yeah. So we've all kind of had our origin stories with the band.
Yeah, we should probably start working through the early years. Now, just so folks know, we're not doing a complete, album by album deep dive on just the discography. There are parts of it we're going to talk about in detail. There are some parts that we're going to kind of just get the big meta picture on. Hunter requested that, yeah, we focus on some parts, but kind of pick and choose things from later parts in the catalog. And towards the end of things, we also want to spend some time focusing on the bands that AUTOPSY influenced, kind of what their whole legacy has been on the extreme metal scene. So this isn't going to be like an album ranking show. We're not picking every single album apart, but we do want to spend some time, especially on those very early seminal records.
Yeah. And we're going to start off with Mr. Ginn.
Absolutely.
I guess.
Severed Survival.
Yeah. That. Here and then here.
You have the futurist one I do. Yeah.
Yep.
I got the CD and gave my tape away to somebody. I kind of regret it. Anyway.
I had a really bad habit in like the late 90s and early 2000s of getting rid of all my originals and buying digipacks or expanded versions. And
yep.
Yeah, it's been a real. It took a couple of paychecks for me to get my first pressings of the Dark Throne Peacefield trilogy back. I bought the digipacks with Fenris talking over everything.
Yeah.
Oh, yep.
Yeah.
Miscalculation.
It happened to many of
us.
us.
Yeah, you listen to it once and it's like never again.
Yeah, no, I don't need this. Yeah, I mean, Severed Survival. I mean, Marty, you kind of summed up everything that it is. It's really primitive, but God, like DiGiorgio adds so much awesomeness and weirdness to it.
So good.
And the way that DiGiorgio and Reifert play off of each other, I mean, it's so weird that like
it's the rock thing, it's the rhythm set, an actual bass playing with the drums. It's
what it is.
But he farts around too, which makes it really tasty. Anyway, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, totally. Because I mean, the guitars are largely primitive, and I mean, Reifert's vocals are just unlike any other death metal vocals. I think. I mean, they sound monstrous. They sound kind of Lovecraftian. They're not. They, like you said, he sounded like he was puking up. I mean, he actually does. It's got a kind of physicality to it that even goes beyond your most visceral sort of death metal vocals. The dude sounds possessed. But yeah, it's like it's super doomy. It's primitive in that punky way. It's immediate. It's obviously recorded live. In fact, I would wager that pretty much all AUTOPSYs recorded live.
Maybe some of the newer stuff is getting a little too slick.
Yeah,
but the early stuff, especially Severed and Fiend for Blood, you listen to that, it's like got to be live.
Fiend for Blood, yeah,
yeah,
yeah. that shit was not recorded in isolation booths.
No.
No.
They had a short period of time, and they probably finished early with it.
Right. Like, guys, yeah, you got 8 hours. We need 2.
Right.
Yeah.
2 takes and we're done.
But yeah, I mean, I don't know what else to say about it. It's just, I mean, and like, look at it. You know, like this is not Seagrave.
No.
I mean,
this is a definite step up, but I still like the original one better, just because that was the one I had. You know?
I do too. Well, the original one's even creepier because it's from the point of view of the victim.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is, I guess, more of a Hellraiser kind of thing. But yeah.
All right, Alan, coming at you. I'll be right back.
Okay.
More stuff I thought of I need to pull. I'll be right back.
Yeah, no problem. So yeah, I have a later pressing, and it has both covers, which is kind of nice if you can reverse the booklet. So you can have either image. I tend to like the doctor cover a little bit better. Not sure why.
No, I do. Yep.
Yeah, just the one I go with. But yeah, it's a fantastic debut album. One thing that's always stood out to me about Severed Survival is that it's really consistent front to back. That it's not like there's 1 or 2 tracks that you must hear that are way above the rest of the material. Mm-hmm. There's no lull in the middle of the album. There's not a couple of throwaway tracks that you feel like are unnecessary. It's like it's just very, very solid, start to finish. Favorite track would definitely have to still be finding on the track list here. Ridden with Disease has always been my favorite one from it. And the album does end a little different. Not bad, but different. Those last 2 tracks with Embalmed and Stillborn, those go back to the earlier demo stuff.
Yeah,
which
I love Embalmed.
Yeah, and those 2 tracks from the 87 demo sounds, you can hear maybe a lot more thrash roots in that very first demo. But then even by 88, the Critical Madness demo, they're definitely starting to find their sound. Some of the songs from that are featured on here too, and those are more the songs where they're starting to get in those slower parts and alternating with the faster sort of punk inspired sections. But Involved in Stillborn, these versions are fine. They just, you can kind of tell that those probably are from earlier in their songwriting career. They're still used on the album and they're still fine. It's not like they stick out really obtusely or anything.
Right.
It's just clear that they're a little bit different. They're from a slightly earlier era when the band was writing stuff. But really great debut album, very consistent. The one thing that has always bugged me about this, if you look this up, it always says like, hey, you get the Retribution for the Dead EP as bonus tracks, but you really don't. You get 2 of the 3 tracks from the EP. But then you also have, Funerality as a bonus track.
What version do you have?
What is this? It's listed as a Peaceville. I think it's like about a 2016 reissue. It's not an old one.
Because the Peaceful Futurist has got has it on there.
Yeah, but no, because this one it has In the Grip of Winter and it has Destined to Fester. But the 3rd bonus track is Funerality. And Retribution for the Dead, I mean, I'll show this in a second. It's a bonus track on this particular reissue series for Mental Funeral. And it's like, why did you split up the EP over the 2 goddamn CDs? That's
it's like
so
the whole
annoying.
Exciter thing all over again.
It almost is. It almost is. So yeah, it's make even more annoying because the Retribution for the Dead EP hasn't been reissued, and it's very, very expensive to get old copies of that. And it's supposed to be here all intact. Again, literally, like if you look at like the little hypes, comments on it, these pressings say comes with the EP, comes with 2/3 of the EP. So that grinds my gears a bit, but it's still a fantastic album. And like y'all have said too, they kind of have their own sound. They don't sound exactly like Death. They're not miles removed from Leprosy or anything like that. But you would never mistake this for a Death album or obituary album. They're early death metal, but they already have their own sound. You ever notice how different scenes when they start out, every band tends to have their own sound? There's a lot more uniqueness. And then you check back 4 years later, and there's 50 bands that all sound the same.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, Autopsy's, here kind of, early days of death metal, and they're already, kind of forging their own identity.
Yep.
So
really,
Marty,
every genre experiences that, but I think the most problematic of the bunch would be black metal. I mean, how many Darkthrone and Burzum clones are there?
Yep.
Probably about 80% of black metal bands for a long time sounded like Darkthrone or Burzum.
Oh,
Still
yeah.
do on occasion. So,
and you still find a lot of them. Yep. Absolutely, you're correct. But Marty, what are your thoughts on Severed Survival?
I mean, not a lot to offer extra other than, this is my favorite Autopsy album. I know everybody's like, oh,
Really?
the first album. I like Mental Funeral too. It's really good, but this is it's just a different level of sickness. It feels like a band stoned off their asses in a studio, just jamming,
They are.
And again, we brought up Steve DiGiorgio. There is no understating what special thing he brought to the band. I mean, that hearing that Rickenbacker, I don't know if it's the fretless or if he's playing the Ricken. It has the cuts like a Rickenbacker, so I'm assuming it's a Rickenbacker. But just hearing that, the way he puts his accents in this slow, sludgy, stoner doomish kind of death metal it's just really kind of innovative. It's not, he doesn't do anything super crazy. He just cuts through. He's doing some cool, tasty licks on here. The drunken vocal performance of Chris, it's just, drummers that sing and play. It's kind of impressive. I mean, you're already splitting your brain into 4 hemispheres to operate each limb independently. And on top of it, you sit there and you sing. And you listen to Chris play drums. He doesn't suck. I mean, when he's not taking it easy. He's playing fast. He's throwing in these fills while he's screaming. I mean, there's a lot going on. And, there's a lot of talent on display here. A lot of times they chose to maybe not show that as much. It's still, it's all for the service of the song. And, of course, the Eric Cutler and Danny Corrales. It's the unthinkable guitar duo. You could tell, I think Danny is older. So I think that might be where some of the rock comes in. I don't know. You listen to some of the leads, you could tell they're kind of improvising them on the spot maybe.
Yep.
The riffs are so inventive. They have a bit of a punk vibe. At times they got a bit of the stoner, doom, rock thing. It's just such an interesting mix of people involved in this that makes it sound like Autopsy. So you're really not going to find a band out there that has the sauce that these guys, they have the special sauce. There is a lot of imitators, but maybe not the original in this instance.
I do not want to know what is in Autopsy special sauce.
That's a sauce. It's a secret.
Do not
sauce
show me the
that,
label, please.
No.
Psilocybin.
Yeah. But yeah, there's something else I was going to say, and it gone. So anyway, yep, that is an amazing thing. And before we get into that, we can also talk about Retribution for the Dead if you want. The EP is attached to this. I got to say, Destined to Fester, is that like maybe one of the best song titles ever? Destined to Fester? I mean,
Yes.
It's got a ring to it, and it's true. It's just true. But yeah, I mean, it's kind of in the same. This came out. Severed Survival was 89. Retribution for the Dead EP was 91. So it was a couple years in between. I don't know if I would say there's a lot of evolution here. It's kind of in the same ballpark.
It is.
Hunter.
Yeah. But I think even a little more atmospheric, a little darker.
Maybe to match the cover art for the EP.
Yeah. Which I personally adore.
It's cool.
It's very cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Very atmospheric.
Alan, you have anything to say about Retribution?
Love this EP. And you kind of mentioned it earlier, Marty, but yeah, even the cover art's, very different in their catalog. It's got, this kind of, very weird, creepy, ethereal thing going on. I love the way the band's logo is kind of, spliced into, the tree branches themselves. It shows off, Autopsy at, kind of their doomiest. The Sabbath side really comes through here. And it's not just Sabbath. One of the bands that, really stands out to me on some of those slower autopsy moments, and I've seen, Reifert and company, mention this band, as an influence, is Trouble. There are moments, especially when they get some of those riffs that have a little bit more of that swingy kind of swagger to them. It's vintage Trouble, and it just leaps out at you. It's like, oh, I know what you guys were listening to Psalm 9 a whole bunch, weren't you? And yes, they've, credited that as an influence over the years. So, and for me, when Autopsy gets slow, that's when they get really, really special. They're absolutely fine when they're doing, the faster stuff, but when they mix in those slower parts, that's the part, that really, really gets me. And this is the EP where they kind of accentuate that the most.
They're not afraid to go doomy at all.
Not at all. No. And, we'll talk about their, the kind of their impact on things later. This is, to a point where you really start to see the origins of what becomes Death-Doom as its own style over the years. That Autopsy is doing both. Now they're blending it in this, their own way. Again, you have fast part, slow part, fast part, slow part in, many of the songs. But yeah, I love that Retribution for the Dead wasn't afraid to show a very different side of the band. It would have been really easy just to throw together some outtakes in the Severed Survival style completely. And that's not what this is. This EP is kind of unique in their catalog. And I really do wish they would reissue it so that it's a little easier to obtain on the wallet, because I think it's, some of their best material. And somewhere there is an alternate universe, and it'd be an interesting one to peek in on. But in that universe, Autopsy actually decided to go down this path rather than the path they chose. And they actually became much more of a doom metal entity instead of, keeping the death elements mixed in. I think it'd be really interesting to know what they would have done if this became the main focus of their sound rather than just using it as part of their sound. So yeah, a lot to say about the EP, but I love it. It's one of my 2 favorite Autopsy releases. Just this 1 3-track EP is great.
Right on. That brings us to 1991 with Mental Funeral. Hunter.
Yep. Probably, and I'm not going to get in, to rating death metal albums, but this is probably a top 5 death metal album for me. I think it's insanely special. There's no production like Mental Funeral. Like
it's a lot crisper.
Yeah, there's no drum sound like Mental Funeral. And I think it's like oddly complex. Like Alan was talking about the Trouble influence, like the harmonies in the guitar department are really, really odd, really creepy. There's a lot of spidery kind of guitar work, weird like time signature things that you wouldn't expect out of them. It's almost like some proggy parts in there, not in a virtuosic way or a in a showy way, but there's a lot of thought going into this stuff. Most cavernous sounding drums ever. But yeah, it's I think it's a masterpiece. I don't know what a Mental Funeral is, but I don't want to have one.
Right.
But yeah, I think it's just about perfect. There are a few death metal albums that if someone were to ask me what is death metal, I'd play like Sinister's Cross the Sticks.
God, it's one of my favorites.
And I'd probably play Mental Funeral. Like if I really wanted to illustrate death metal. So I can't say enough good stuff about this album. It gets me. I still listen to it regularly.
Oh yeah.
But yep, very special.
All right, Alan.
I'm pretty sure a Mental Funeral is having to attend a TED Talk given by Taylor Swift. That's what it boils down to right there.
Or a Kardashian. Yeah.
Oh, now I'm having a mental funeral just trying to think of that. Oh, brain hurt. Oh, oh. Something's coming up on that one.
Imagine how
Hunter.
riveting that would be.
Oh,
Oh man.
oof. Okay, we're back. Yeah, this is my favorite Autopsy album. You know, Severed is great, and I like a lot of the other ones, but this one is, you know, hands down my favorite. Like Hunter said, it's fantastic. There's a lot of stuff going on here. It would be easy to write this off as just like, you know, extreme knuckle dragging Death-Doom. But the more you play it, the more you start picking out that there's a lot of variation on this album.
Yeah.
It is not just a bunch of songs creeping along at the same, you know, pace with the exact same beat and, you know, everything. It's really quite varied. And as you know, Hunter pointed out, some of, you know, just, you know, more like, you know, the atmospheric stuff and almost a little bit of the proggy stuff on here is among some of the coolest. You know, one of my favorite moments on this album, and it's always feels like an odd one to pick out, but it's Flesh Crawl. It just has, you know, such a weird atmosphere to it and sounds so creepy. And, you know, it's too long to be just an intro for Torn, you know, from the Womb, in my opinion. It's its own, you know, really cool little song. It's something, you know, that Sabbath was doing, like way back on Master of Reality. You'd get, you know, those, you know, kind of, you know, short songs, 2 or 3 minutes of, you know, them making, you know, very odd, unusual noises before you'd launch into, you know, Into the Void or something like that. And yeah, it's kind of cool to see Autopsy do that in their own style across this album. So yeah, I can see why folks would point this out. A ton of folks have agreed with Hunter on this one in the chat. You know, Witchfinder, Carnage, Overkill, all saying, you know, this is, you know, absolutely top death metal album, not just for drum sounds or stuff, but just across the board. It's an amazing one for them. So yeah, that would be my take on Mental Funeral. Just a quick heads up to Marty and other folks, power here is flickering just a little bit. We may be getting some ice on power lines and stuff. If I happen to disappear, I'll do what I can to hop back on. But just wanted to let you know ahead of time in case I do suddenly blink out.
There is a StreamYard app for phones. You can, it's not great, but it would work. So,
yeah, I've used it once before when there was a power issue here. So if possible, I'll hop in that way if I need to. But anyway, Marty, what is your take on Mental Funeral?
Really, I mean, you guys summed it up great. And Hunter calling some of the riffs like spidery is kind of perfect because they got more technical in their own way, and it is very impressive. The fact too that these spidery lines that they do as twin guitar pieces. I can't remember which song it's in. I'm horrible with song names, but yeah, just it's a bit more complex, and I would say I prefer Severed Survival a little bit more, just because it's probably the first one I heard. But this is definitely a more advanced, better album all the way around. From the sound, it's a little tighter, it's a little sharper. Oops, I think I have to let.
I think Hunter's reconnecting right now. So
yep.
All right.
He's almost there.
We're not getting your video, Hunter.
Really?
We got your audio, not your video.
Huh.
You might want to go all the way out and come all the way back in.
That's what she said.
We're waiting for that. But yep, everybody summed it up really well for me. So Mental Funeral is definitely a step up in structure, songwriting, more adventurous playing, all the way around.
And just one last comment about it too.
There you go.
Well, you know, it's not just Severed Survival Part 2. I mean, they are trying to do something different with this album, and that's really to their credit. It's something that a lot of bands don't do. They, you know, write a first album that goes over well, and the second album just is often kind of a weaker version of the debut album. Whereas Mental Funeral is its own beast. It's not trying to be Severed Survival Part 2. It's the same band using the same influences, but they're highlighting different things. And like you said, Marty, they're expanding,
Yep.
but in a different direction, not just resting on their laurels or, trying to recapture the same thing they did the first time out on an album, which is really to their credit, whether you like Mental Funeral or whether it's not one of your favorites. It's cool to see a band that was willing to take chances that way, for lack of a better phrase.
All right. Well, that brings us to this little EP, Fiend for Blood, which came out. Mental Funeral was 91. Fiend for Blood EP came out in 92. Not a lot going on in that cover. Do you have anything to say about this one?
That's one I'm not ashamed that I bought the duo here with Fiend for Blood on it, because the cover, not a lot going on. Crazy ass album or EP. DiGiorgio, we talk about production, one of the weirdest productions ever. It sounds like every instrument is being suffocated. And it just gives it like this really dire, like urgent, kind of weird vibe. I think probably a lot of weed involved in this one too. It's this is aside from Mental Funeral, and it's like a very thin margin. This is almost his favorite Autopsy.
Wow.
Yeah, that's what I said. Wow. All right.
I really love how it starts off. It like jumps right out at you, like boom. All of a sudden, it's like super fast. Like, whoa, hey, Autopsy. Yeah. Alan, what about you?
Dinner first,
Right.
This one in a way feels more like the typical 90s EP, where it's like just a very kind of short burst. Here's a few songs that are either maybe things they just haven't got around to recording before, or they're trying out a couple ideas for the next album. But it doesn't feel like as intentional or planned out as like the Retribution for the Dead EP did, or maybe some of their EPs later on also. There's nothing wrong with it. Like y'all have said, it's basically just very straightforward, goes straight for the throat. There's nothing fancy about the music or the cover. So it's a fine listen. I'm with Hunter on this one. It's the kind of thing I wouldn't feel the need to own it as a standalone, piece of vinyl or CD. Having this as bonus tracks on a reissue feels absolutely fine to me. So nothing wrong with it, but not something I'm never going to think like, I'm in the mood for Autopsy. I just want to hear the Fiend for Blood EP and nothing else right now. That's just not going to happen around here, I don't think.
Well, this to me is kind of Autopsy always had a sickness level to it, both lyrically and in their sound, but they're really starting to up the ante here, and they're ratcheting it up a bit on Fiend for Blood. You got the Squeal Like a Pig song where Chris is at the end grunting like a pig. He's starting to be a little more carefree with... there's a lot of punk on this too. Yeah, there's some speed on here as well. But, I don't know, the inner G.G. Allen in Chris Reifert's starting to come out a bit.
A little bit. That's
which he kind of runs with a lot moving forward here through the next couple albums, and even on side projects like Eat My Fuck. That there, it sounds like a G.G. Allen tribute band almost. But, this is great. Again, Steve DiGiorgio at the helm of the... it's just so... Hearing these fast, weird... Autopsy songs with that bass sticking out like an sadist, Illusions, Chemical Exposure. That's some of my favorite music ever. And to have that combined with the Autopsy sound, it just feels right. This brings me back to the first album. What someone mentioned in the chat earlier, it might have been Devin. They just wish that DiGiorgio stayed with Autopsy and to see how that would have flourished over the years. But not a lot to say. It's just the EP goes by really quick. There's 5 or 6 songs on it, but they've upped the sickness. The lyrics are starting to get foul even more so, and it's about to get even worse as we go forward here. But
yeah, we get into some pretty dicey territory lyrically going forward, where you have to sort of separate Chris the character from Chris the human.
Yeah, exactly.
By all accounts, and even that what I can tell in interviews, like a really kind and kind of sweet person almost. But boy, shit he's channeling through his lyrics, not so sweet.
Right.
Yep.
Okay, well, that brings us to same year, 1992, Acts of the Unspeakable.
Love this cover. I always liked the color scheme on it. The blues and the reds and the golds. It's pretty amazing. And I like the how suggestive it is. Like, you only get a little bit of what's going on in this poor guy's life. You know what I mean? You can imagine what's going on below the cover is a lot worse. But I think this is in a lot of ways their most complex record. I feel like the riffs are more involved. I feel like the drumming's a little bit more premeditated. I mean, it's not a technical record by any stretch, but I do feel like this is sort of the last gasp of that aspect before moving into what we'll talk about next, and sort of where Reifert was heading. I love it. It's like for me, it's kind of the difference between like an ever-flowing stream and indecent and obscene. It like this one's a little more concentrated, a little more brutal, a little more savage, but also a bit more precise too. I love it. I mean, I love the first four, all together. But I feel like this one gets neglected a lot of times because the difference between something like Middle Funeral and Shit Fun is so stark. I think this is sort of the Marcia Brady of the autopsy discography.
Right on. All right, Alan, Acts of the Unspeakable.
Marcia. I dig it. Yeah, I agree with Hunter. I think this one probably gets overshadowed by the two predecessors quite a bit. And yeah, then there's only the one album after this before there's a long hiatus. So it's in a weird place in their discography in a way. I'd have to disagree on the cover art. I just don't like this particular style. It's a cool idea for an image, but that particular style just kind of leaves me scratching my head. And it's funny because the artist Kent, is it Mathau? He does a lot of really cool cover art, and it's usually not in this style. It's usually different. For example, Forbidden's Twisted into Form is one of his pieces. So yeah, some great covers, but yeah, this one just really kind of leaves me scratching my head. It's like, huh?
I have I had the T-shirt of this. I might still have it, but I got too fat. I mean, sexy to wear it anymore.
There's too much of you for the T-shirt to love.
Yeah, and it was one of those. There was so much ink on it. It was like a nipple sander. Oh,
jeez. Yeah.
In the back, I had the two kids sitting like chained up on the pile of skulls. I'm like, I never felt great wearing it in public, to be honest. But I had it. Anyway, go ahead.
Yeah. Sorry. So yeah, it's just not the art piece for me. A lot of folks in the chat have mentioned they like it, and others have too. So I mean, it's just a matter of taste. It's just not the cover for me. But yeah, Hunter's right. It's a good album. I like it, but it does start to show more, of a change of direction for them. I mean, just the fact that you've got 18 songs crammed on here in 35 minutes. They're very. Yeah, they're really starting to lean into that much shorter. It's not down to it's not a grind album at all, but feels more like punk length songs. Really, that influence is starting to take over, with it being more blunt And yeah, the lyrics, getting, yes, just kind of more blatantly graphic, not just macabre graphic in nature.
Yeah.
There's a lot of good stuff on it, though. The production could be better. It feels like the guitars maybe aren't quite as ferocious as they have been on the previous albums. Maybe that's just me or the version I'd listened to. But the track list is a little up and down for me. There's one chunk of songs, and I'm trying to checking the track list here. I like the first several songs, and I like most of the second half down, but there's a few songs in between. It's like right around that little short instrumental, like Spinal Extractions, Death Twitch. Some of the tracks right in, even the title track, for me, it just hits kind of a little rough patch right there. But then by the time you get to like Sculptures, it's all firing off quite well again. But yeah, so this album is when I like it, but there's just there's a little bit of an asterisk there for a couple of things that don't work for me with the cover art and the that just one little set of like 3 or 4 songs in a row where it kind of drops off for me a tad. But otherwise, yeah, I think it's still a really good album, and I do agree with Hunter that yes, Marcia gets all the attention, and Cindy's the cute one, and Jan's just stuck there in the middle with no one paying attention to her. So there you go. It's that's us trying to. I really don't want to imagine the Brady Bunch and Autopsy mixed together. That I'm stuck with that now. It's
chained up on the back of the shirt I used to wear before I got fat.
You just see like a little bit of Peter's head sticking out of the skull grinder or something. That's an image. Marty, what other than the nipple sander shirt, and that really should be an Autopsy song at some point. If that's not on their next EP, I'm going to be disappointed.
All right.
But Marty, your thoughts on this one?
Well, it's 1992, and I remember some interviews. I can't remember if the interviews I read were. I interviewed him. It might have been talking to me about it. I don't know. For Maniacs, I interviewed him when The Ravenous came out. Anyway, Autopsy was beginning to get frustrated with the fact that they were doing these tours and not a lot of people are showing out at the shows, which can be frustrating. You travel across the country and play to a half-empty or virtually empty club. And I remember getting this when it came out, being excited about it and shelving it pretty quickly. It just didn't, it felt longer than it is. I just looked, it's 35 minutes long. It just seemed like it was going on forever. It didn't seem like there was much differentiation between the tracks. It sounded like Autopsy, of course. They had their formula nailed down really well. It sounded like they're refining things a bit in the structures of the songs. But this week is the first I've listened to this album in a long time, a long time. And it has aged better than I remember it, to be completely honest. I remember just be like, I'm going to listen to Severed Survival. I'm going to listen to Mental Funeral. This is good. It's just whatever. It's pretty solid record. The songs are really well done. The production is good. That really isn't a bad thing to say about it. It was just 1992. I mean, we all know what's about to happen to metal. I mean, there's rumblings in Norway, and it's going to upset the apple cart for death metal, just like death metal did for thrash metal for a good spell. So this is one of those albums that I think gets, lost in the shuffle a bit. Even though it's on Caroline Peaceville, Caroline here in the US. I don't think it got a lot of push. I really don't. I think probably the subject matter, I think probably the artwork, which, I have the censored version of it, but I think there's just a lot of things going against Autopsy at this point. And I think the next album is a response to all that. It's kind of their 2 middle fingers in the air swan song, fuck you. And we're going to talk about that next, which is
Well, Marty, one just quick thing, because you brought up a good point with what was about to happen in 93. There's also just what was happening in 92, that grunge, of course, was now a worldwide phenomenon, and even within metal you were seeing a lot of bands already starting to move in different directions. More bands were embracing a punkier side of things. You were starting to get early signs of more like, sludgy sounds starting to become more popular. The thrash, chokehold on heavy metal was broken by this point. And even death metal had been around just long enough that it was starting to get a little bloated, by the time you get to the end of 92. So this album does come out, in what's, that kind of weird transitional period. And I think you're right. I think some of that kind of shows through in the sound that Autopsy is going for here.
I think they were just out of step with the death metal trajectory. In that Scott Burns book, he talks about how death metal had become a technical arms race. And, Autopsy does not fit into that at all.
No.
Og have club. Og throw rock.
Yeah.
I think they were they just kind of found themselves alone. Not that there wasn't primitive death metal being made then, but you had even a band like Sorrow. You remember those guys on?
Oh yeah.
How can you forget the band photo where the guy's shorts cut off Daisy Dukes is sitting there, and you could see the Beans and the Franks up his short in the band photo. It's like I might not remember a damn note on the album, but I'll always remember that promo picture on the back.
Well, there's only 3 notes on the album.
Yeah, exactly. Well, another band like that in kind of the same wheelhouse as Autopsy is Pungent Stench. I mean, they're ultra filthy, anti, technology and ultra filthy lyrics. But getting back to the bands playing in front of nobody, this isn't a new phenomenon. Bands today can still travel a long distance and play to 15 people. Those 15 people are members in the other bands that they're playing with. So it's not a new phenomenon, but by the time you're on a bigger label in Europe, you're getting good distribution, hopefully, in here in the US. You shouldn't be a band on your 3rd album playing in front of nobody. It's a tough thing it hurts the ego. It hurts a lot of things. It screws a lot of things up. But anyway, let's get to where are we at here? 1995.
Time for some fun.
What kind of fun are we going to have, Hunter?
I think we're going to have some shit fun.
Yeah. Yeah.
God.
If I only had that T-shirt, that would have made the other one seem like a Smurf shirt or something. I don't know.
Yeah. Take the wife and the kids to dinner.
Yep.
God, you talk about an album, like when I do listen to it, I always like pull it off the shelf and then put the cover back and then stuff it in the disc player. God, it really is like you said, Marty, just a total fuck you to everything.
Everything. Their label, everything.
It is like senselessly obscene.
Yeah.
But it wasn't much of a stretch after this let me back up a little bit. So I haven't listened to this one in quite a while, and going back to prepare for this, I listened to it, and it's darker and deathlier than I remember. I remember thinking like just how punky it was and how the leap from here to like Abscess Urine Junkies was pretty easy. But it has a lot more death metal in it than I remembered it having. I have to say, I quite enjoyed it.
It was fun.
Yeah, it's shit fun.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's like it makes every attempt to like just offend everyone with everything.
Yeah, the copy I have does not even print the lyrics, which is probably a good thing.
You don't want those lyrics printed.
Oh boy.
What even was happening in death metal in 95? I mean, by 95, death metal was pretty much like where thrash was in like 91. I mean, you had certain bands like Suffocation put out Pierce from Within that year. Some bands that were kind of staying the course, but man, this thing's an island in 1995.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I did not see this in any shops here in the US, and it's even, well, it's Music for Nations. The copy I have is music, Peaceful Music for Nations.
Yeah. Yep.
And also, I don't know if the back of yours is like this, Hunter, but look at everything is off to the side. I mean, come on, center justify that shit, art guy.
Don't care.
Yeah, there's like whatever.
Like he turns it in, and
after designing this, they're like, whatever. I'm done with this shit. I'm getting paid. Yeah, whatever.
The poor art guy had to look at this. He said, "So what do you guys want?"
Well, the art guy looking at it, I hate to be the model in the on the picture. I mean, that guy's the worst end of the stick there.
The poo stick.
Yeah. Or the person taking the picture. Oh my God.
He got the shit end of the pick.
He did.
He did.
Oh my God. Do you think they like tied off a hot dog, or I don't know?
I'm sure it's like some kind of fake rubber dog.
I don't think it's.
Yeah.
As soon as you say it looks fake, you know it probably isn't, and you just say that to help yourself. You know, as a man of the world, you see things on the internet you wish you didn't, and that wasn't fake. Yep. You saw how the cookies were made right there on the damn video. Yeah. All right. Well, anyway, Alan, what did you think of? Is Ship Fun one of those you have 15 copies of, like your Jag Panzer Ample Destruction or Wishfinder General, all the different pressings? Is this one of those that's takes up some real estate on your shelving?
I have 15. I have 15 minus 15 copies of this one.
You have, Alan?
Yep. The total number here is 15 minus 15. I do not have this one. Now, I did see this one for sale back in the day when it came out.
I got it for $6.
Yeah, there were on shelves. There were a couple of stores I went to that did have this one. I never knew anybody that bought it. It's not that bad of an album. It's not quite as bad as its reputation makes it out to be, but it does have its problems. We just mentioned, with Acts of the Unspeakable, you had 18 songs, in 35 minutes. And that works because, like I said, there's a few songs on that one I don't like, but they go by quick enough. They don't take up a ton of time on the album, so it's not a big deal. This time around, you've got 21 songs, but the album's bloated out to 55 minutes. That feels way too long for this material for me. There are some good songs spread throughout the album. Yeah, there's some that are just, whatever type of tracks. But now it's starting to get filled up with more and more of that. Because like y'all have said, you very much get the feeling the band was kind of out of it at this point. My understanding, which may be incorrect, is that the guys had pretty much already decided this project had run its course. That they were already seriously eyeballing their future as Abscess rather than Autopsy. And this was just kind of
really a step up. I mean, let's be honest. Urine junkies. I mean, did you really do much to sidestep your middle finger? You're not like, no, I like these diapers. They fit just fine. I'm going to continue to wear them.
I got to tell you, when I first alphabetized my record collection, Abscess, I had Urine Junkies at the time, and it was the first thing in my collection, and I was like, fuck this. This will not be number one.
Yeah.
Nice.
Number two, yeah.
It is though number one. It isn't number two. That's Shit Fun. Number
Shit
one
Fun is number two.
Urine Junkies.
Yeah, no, it went out at that point.
Sorry to interrupt you, Alan. We had a little tangent there.
Oh no, it's all good. Yeah, I mean, to them, but to them, it was enough of a difference that they wanted a fresh start with it. So yeah, this album could be kind of like Acts of the Unspeakable Part 2, but it's too long. They're taking too much time wrapping up their business and closing up shop here. But it's still, it does still have its moments. It's just that they're a little bit more, spaced out overall. But you still have, a lot of, good short to the point songs. They're still shifting back and forth at times, from, the punky thrashy blasts to the, slower, doomier portions. It's still there within the sound. But yeah, it's just too bloody long,
Absolutely.
And the reason, why wouldn't the artwork aside, why wouldn't I necessarily want to copy this album? It's because if I have this and Acts of the Unspeakable, there's just not really a situation where I'm thinking to myself, I want to hear the 55-minute version of this period of Autopsy as opposed to the 35-minute version. I would just always play Acts of the Unspeakable before this one, I'm pretty sure. The other thing here, and this is just a matter of taste, I guess, but we've commented that obviously, the material's been getting much more crude, more foul, and for some people that's a big thing. It's just like, oh, haha, that's so fun, so great, so extreme, so edgy. That's fine. That's not something that draws me to a band or a project. I've never been the person who wants to hear the fastest band, or the person who geeks out over the deepest growl or the sickest scream. I'm just like, if the music's good, that's great, but I don't care. If that's your selling point, I don't care. And on this one, it's starting to really feel like, the selling point is just how gross and vile can we be, and how blunt can we be about it?
Pretty gross and pretty blunt.
Yeah, and it's like, that's fine. It's fine. I'm not offended by it. It's not turning my stomach or anything. It's just kind of like, I've heard you do better, and I've heard you handle those concepts better. Two quick examples, there's a line in it's one of the tracks from Severed Survival where they're talking. It's one of the really anti-religious songs. The title escapes me, but he's talking about basically decapitating religious figures and taking a crap on their corpse. But the lyric for that,
you got to have a period on the end of your sentence. So,
for Severed Survival, the lyric delivery is, "I leave a token of disgust on your carcass."
Mm-hmm.
Then you get to this album with Shit Fun, and when they're talking about something similar, the lyric, and again, I don't know which song it is. I'm not looking through all 21 of them to find it, but the lyric is literally like, "My butthole begins to dilate as I poop."
Is it Shit Eater? Is it the song Shit Eater?
I don't remember. I would have to check, and maybe someone in the chat can help me out with that one. But I mean, it's just literally they go from "I leave a token of disgust" to "My butthole dilates." It's just like, hey, you're kind of,
this episode's getting demonetized. We might as
kinda
well just put it out there.
dumbing it down here, guys. And the second example
sorry,
that
guys.
ties into that just kind of hits the nail on the head. I'm pretty sure it's the review done by Autothrall. He reviewed a ton of stuff for years and years, and I think still does over on Metal Archives. I think it's his review of this album that just kind of points at that. The first couple of Autopsy albums, it's all about this very grisly, macabre, creepy. I think he describes the creepy, caretaker, and some haunted graveyard, rotting away kind of vibe. And on this album, it feels more like it's for a bunch of kids in a trailer park who like sticking their fingers up their butt and making frogs explode with firecrackers.
Yeah.
And I'm just so, and when I read that, I'm just like, that is
Gumbo.
exactly how this album, strikes me. That it's for the jackass watching crowd, more so than the hardcore death metal fans. Not that there's not any overlap over there, but it just feels like there's like, it's got that very different attitude. And like I think you guys kind of noted, they're probably fed up. They're tired of this project. They're sick. They're ready to move on. And they're just gonna be like, here's one big middle finger. We'll just make it, as horrible as we can, lowbrow as we can, and move on. And that's shit fun. But again, I'm not shitting on the album.
But that would be fun.
I'm not trying to poop on anybody's fun here. There's some good music on it. It's just diluted down with a little bit too much filler. You can tell their hearts just aren't in it. It's a wrap-up album. I don't know if it was a contractual obligation album, or they did feel like, well, we'll have one more go at it before we move on. But you could tell they were already kind of had one foot out the door, I think, when they did this.
Jeff did the research for you here. Humiliate Your Corpse is the Butthole Dilation song.
Thank you, Jeff. Yep.
All the way from down under. We got the straight shooter on the info.
Yeah. If you haven't checked out Jeff's channel, by the way, folks, go do so.
Yes.
Lots of cool stuff over there. Jeff's a great guy.
Hell yeah. Be getting you back on here soon too, Jeff. So get ready.
Yes. We will be going heavy metallurgy down underground again pretty soon.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep. So, Marty, you haven't had a chance to articulate your thoughts on album number 4 here.
Well, the funny thing is, I was just sitting here looking at this. I listened to this digitally this week, and even though this was a middle finger to the label and everything, the label gets the last laugh. We've got includes. It names a few names of the songs. It names like 5 song titles, and it says, and many more. See inside for details. And you go inside for details, and you see why the record label said, yeah, no, we're not going to have stuff about raping and all these other awful, I sodomize your corpse and all these other things on the back where people could pick it up and look at it. So the label got the last laugh, I suppose. But I did enjoy this album this week. This is another one I have not listened to in a very long time, but there's just an intensity to it. You could tell they were pissed, and I think it translated well to this album. I think because of that added intensity, it makes it stand up a bit from Acts of the Unspeakable. Acts of the Unspeakable seems very thought out, very meticulous, very plotted. This is just a, grab your ass and go type of album. Turn up loud. We're going to bang these songs out. There's 21 songs on the album. A lot of short stuff. And yeah, there's multiple. I mean, I'm not shocked about anything anymore, but I'm just listening to these, being reminded of these lyrics and just going, wow. It might have been Grave Violators. I mean, there's just some, I'm not going to say it here. You want to go to the Metal Archives and look up the lyrics and read along. It's fun. Follow the bouncing turd. But, it's a weird epitaph because at this point the band breaks up, and it's just a statement that you're leaving that isn't going to be, it's just so far removed. It isn't and isn't. It's so far removed from where they came from, but yet it's still completely Autopsy. It's just them saying, screw everything. We're going out in an eruption of goo and yuck. And they did. It's just a weird thing to leave behind. You know what I mean?
Great.
It just is. It's not their best work. It's just very intense. It's very Autopsy. And for that, I like it. I enjoyed the album. I thought, it sounds like Autopsy. Even at their most pissed off and thrown together, it sounded just like the song just kind of, okay, boom, short and sweet. We're leaning into our punk side on this one, and they really did. And again, I know people that like G.G. Allin. You listen to 1 or 2 G.G. Allin songs and think, okay, I'm good, because that's all G.G. Allin is shock value. It just is. He's had some good, Jay Mascis played with G.G. Allin for a while from Dinosaur Jr. So how do you connect the dots there and then have Jay Mascis at the other end come out with an actual career that people enjoy? But, G.G. Allin's side of Autopsy and some of Chris's other projects, I'm not there with it. I get the appeal. I get the appreciation of it, the shock value of it, but it's I'm more of like with Alan on this one. I'm more of a music guy than an image shock thing. It just seems very easy just to be gross and not. Thankfully, it remains Autopsy. I'm rambling. Anyway, Ship Fun, 1995, and they don't do anything again until 2010, which is, and I gotta say, this is a freaking banger. I don't know anybody, Hunter, if you've heard this or have this or whatever, but The Tomb Within, it's an EP. They have brought on, what's his name? Joe
Allen.
Joe Trevisano.
He goes by Allen on a lot of them, but it's like Trevisano is the last name.
He was one of the members of Von, a one riff anomaly that underground people seem to love, and that's just ridiculous. But yeah, Von. He was also in Chris's side G.G. Allin band Eat My Fuck, and he was also in Abscess. So, yep, this is Autopsy's reunion. Hunter, do you have anything to say about this one?
Yeah, I sadly don't have a copy of it.
Oh, it's so good, dude. This is of the reunion. I think this is the best material right here. It's so hungry. It sounds great. Anyway, go ahead.
So like, I actually didn't get it. I guess I was sleeping when it came out because this is where Macabre Eternals, where I picked back up. which I loved. But it's a great EP, but sadly don't have a physical copy of it. But know it well digitally. It does. I mean, and they had a hell of a run. And I guess we can get to it in a little bit, but there was an album a little bit later that's really one of my favorite Autopsy records, period. But they, someone mentioned, it returned to glory along with Carcass's Surgical Steel. I think it's a really great comparison.
Yeah.
Because I did not expect Carcass to come back and sound that good either.
It sounded like the logical album. This should have been the album in between Necroticism and Heartwork.
Right. Exactly.
That would have been a more palatable transition for a guy like me that loved symphonies, that loved and worshiped Necroticism. All of a sudden, you got this slick Melodeath sounding Carcass album with a font instead of their killer logo.
Yeah.
And lame Giger art. I'm like, come on, man. Anyway, go ahead. We'll get people yell at me about that. I still like Heartwork, but man, I was disappointed for a while. It took me a minute to get my head wrapped around it.
You're not alone in that.
Yeah.
I liked it immediately. But
it's great. It's a great, technically great album.
The older I get, Necroticism's probably my favorite. I worship symphonies. But
they're so close. I mean, it depends on the week, but yeah, both albums.
Necroticism's just unimpeachable.
100%.
But yeah, I love the reunion stuff. And like I told Alan when we were talking about this, so I'll go ahead and say, I don't know what our narrative is here. But this is, sorry, I'm getting glare. This is like one of my favorite tourniquets came out in 2014. It's one of my absolute favorite autopsies. I think
it's pretty twisted. The music is very they kind of get a little bit more complex.
They do. But it's like, so macabre, like the production's a little too controlled.
Pretty slick.
It is slick, yeah. And tourniquets, I think you just kind of hit the nail on the head what it is for me. It's like the music is more complex, but the production is more live. It feels more spontaneous.
More modern.
Especially feels like just on fire. He sounds as hungry as a drummer as he ever has. Yeah.
I got to say, even with all the bells and whistles for technology in the recording studio now, even Autopsy today, they still have retained that organic, plodding, low-tuned drum sound. Yep. He sounds like he's beating on war kettles made out of human skin.
Totally.
It's just, there's a flat plunk to it. It's just it adds to the thickness of their sound.
Yep.
Alan, you want to touch upon? Did you listen to The Tomb Within?
Yeah, I've heard it since. Now, like Hunter, I was completely, zoned out on death metal when Autopsy was getting back together. But, I've checked it out since. I'm not as big on it as you are, Marty, but it does have some things going for it. First off, the cover art is just amazingly ghastly.
It's great.
It really is. It's one of those covers that you look at and you just see different details, hiding in the background and stuff. And it's a really messed up.
Is that supposed to be like a vagina type of thing too? You got the corpse coming out of it. It's like a ribcage vagina thing.
I think it. Yeah, I mean, you can definitely read that into it for sure. That or that it's like inside the body of the zombie, the undead mummified body inside the undead mummified zombie. But I could kind of spread open. Or again, it's the color scheme on the thing too just really adds to it. With the way they graded the reds and the grays together. Musically, I think it's fine. For me, it's one of those titles I refer to as proof of concept. The band has been gone for 15 years. They're coming back. What are they going to do? And as someone, I think Carnage mentioned, they did have a single out before this.
Yeah.
So they
technically tested the waters a little bit.
There were a couple of songs, released before the EP. But the EP, it accomplished its goal of showing that Autopsy could come back and sound good. That, you know, if people were always like, yeah, what the heck are they going to do? Is this going to just be more of the shit fun kind of stuff? Or no? Oh, okay, it's not. Oh, okay, they're getting back to doing more of the actual death metal, death doom stuff. Okay, it got people on board for them to, you know, move on to you know, Macabre Eternal. So yeah, I think the material's fine. I don't think it's bad, but it doesn't stick with me or stand out a whole lot either. But I think the EP did its job. It put the band back in the spotlight. It got people interested. It got people worked up for the album to come out the next year, so that when it was time for Macabre Eternal to get released, everybody was, you know, sitting there pounding the table, yelling, "Where's our burrito?"
Yeah. Well, it's kind of like, I remember when this was all happening, I was excited about Autopsy again, and it's kind of like the whole Manila Road thing happening again. Yeah. Manila Road puts out some of the best metal the U.S. ever heard. People didn't really care. They weren't ready for it. Band breaks up for a long time, gets back together. Well, not a long time. They break up for a while. They get back together, and all of a sudden, there's like a groundswell. People have finally found Manila Road, get Manila Road, and love Manila Road. And that's kind of, you know, at the end of Autopsy's career, they were swirling the bowl. They were just satisfied with the respect they were getting. This comes back, and I remember there being a bit of a hubbub about it. And the last few songs on this album, this EP, are freaking great. Really, really, the production is great. It isn't overdone. It isn't like overproduced. It's just the drums sound like Autopsy. Everything sounds the way it needs to be. And the songs are there. Eric Cutler's back in the band, and this guy is the riff general when it comes to this. And he's wearing his own shirt here, this funeral shirt. This is a project he did. I have the CD of it. It reminds me of Autopsy. I mean, you could tell the sound, a lot of the riffs he wrote were kind of the essence of this is him, I think, a lot of ways. But yeah, listen to this again this week. I was reminded just how good it was and how excited I was that Autopsy were back, which I think even the band might have been a bit interested in, because ever since then, they've been kind of like a functioning band. They've been putting out albums every couple of years. Macabre Eternal was 2011. Headless Ritual was 2013. Tourniquets, Hacksaws, and Graves was 2014. Skull Grinder, the 15. Puncturing the Grotesque EPs, 17. So they've been... There's a bit of a gap between that EP and Morbidity Triumphant, but there was also Greg Wilkinson from Earhammer Studios and a bunch of other bands.
Yeah, they swapped out bassists yet again. The bassist has always been the Spinal Tap drummer of Autopsy. It's always been the bassist that they've never.
And I gotta say, Greg Wilkinson, he is a good replacement. I mean, I think he has that old school play with your fingers, kind of a dirty rock guy kind of vibe, and you can hear, especially on Morbidity Triumphant and the new one, Ashes, Organs, Blood, and Crypts, there's some bass lines in there. It's like, oh, that's what works really well with Autopsy. And I think Joe, he was more of a pick guy. I think he kind of did root note stuff, but anyway,
Autopsy always benefits from having that bass
fingers. I mean, it's got to be fingers.
It does, man. Because you can kind of hear that clank. You know what I mean? Like you talk about the DiGiorgio thing, like with the Rickenbacker kind of sound.
Yep.
Like and it cuts through.
Absolutely. Anybody want to talk about any of these other albums? I mean, they've been very consistent.
They're all good.
Yeah, they really are.
I mean, I don't get fired up about a new Autopsy record anymore. It's been a while because it's a solid, good band, and they sound like Autopsy. But I think it's commendable that they've been at it back now for almost 15 years and like
longer than they were around the first time.
Yeah,
much
putting out really good shit.
Yep, they've been playing the festivals. They've been doing the work. They're getting out there. I know they just played the Decibel Beer and Metal Fest in Colorado, and I think Chris had screwed up shoulder. He was the front man. Someone else was playing the drums. Chris was in a sling doing the front man thing, and dedication. They realize that they're not getting any younger. They're getting out there while you strike while the iron's hot. And ever since they've come back, it seems like the iron is hot for Autopsy again, which that's what you like to see with an old school band like this, that this band did not sell out. They're not one of those bands like Celtic Frost. Sorry, guys, we put out a festering turd of an album, Cold Lake. Some people like it. I don't get it, but some people like it. And they struggled for a long time. And then they come back with their tail between their legs and make a killer record. But this band, they have nothing to be ashamed of. I mean, if anything, they got worse. They got grosser. They were like trying to push away, farthest away from any sort of public adoration or media adoration with their album cover and their song titles. They just went full on gross,
Yep.
And I got to applaud them. And I do want to shout out this cover. I always did. I thought this was a cool cover for an album. This is a Wes Benscotter, isn't it?
Yeah, it looks
Pretty sure. Almost all theirs in the reunion era have been.
Yeah.
But yep, no, they've had cool
cool.
cover art. They've had their mascot on a lot of album covers. Some quick thoughts on a few of these albums.
Yep.
And again, for folks watching, for this part of the discography, we decided we weren't going to go through them album by album. Like Hunter said, they start to become kind of just lots of good Autopsy albums, and we want to talk more about bands influenced by Autopsy instead. But Macabre Eternal, I think again people were really excited about it when it came out. Again, I missed it, so this was hindsight, but I think it was a really interesting comeback album. It showed the band that they come across as really excited to be back. It's almost the opposite of shit fun, where you got the sense that it's just like, yeah, we're done with this. And on this one, it's just like, hey,
cool cover too.
We're a very cool cover. Yep. We're not only glad, back and excited to be back, and they're trying a few different things here and there. There's a lot of variation on that album. They're tinkering with the sound. They're letting different influences shine through a bit more. So, it's a great comeback album. It's not just Severed Survival Part 2, and it's not just Mental Funeral Part 2. They really were, in a creative phase with that album, and it shows. It's not perfect. There are parts of it that maybe feel a little too safe. I think y'all mentioned, the production. It's the best production they've ever had, but it is maybe a little too clean, a little too safe for their type of material. It's also a really long album, as I recall. What's the runtime on this one? I feel like it's an hour. It might even be more.
Macabre Eternal is long.
Yeah.
What are you talking of? Hold on.
Yep. Yeah, 12 songs. Yeah, 65 minutes.
Yeah, that's a little too much. That's a little too much Autopsy.
Yeah, and this is that kind of period where you feel like, again, they were playing, like you've said before, Marty, bands were playing to the length of the format. It's a CD. We got to put at least an hour's worth of music on it, or fans will feel cheated. No, we won't. We'd rather have 45 minutes of great music than have it padded out with 20 minutes of so-so music.
I think part of the thing too is a band that gets older, they start to think, is this our last album? I mean, they may have plans to keep going, doing all that stuff, but is someone going to bail? Is this going to be it? So they just write. If they're feeling the muse, they keep writing, and we're going to use it all. We got to use it all.
Yeah. I don't know if that would have been the case with this one, since they wouldn't have been that, aged at this point. But again, I think they're just trying a lot of different stuff, and they wanted to, throw it all out there. I mean, you get an 11+ minute Autopsy song, for crying out loud, on this. Something they've never really done before or since. With doing this, and again, that song covers a lot of different styles. It's not just like an 11-minute Funeral Doom track or anything. So that one's really interesting. What else did we have in the reunion era? I have never heard the next one. What was it? Headless Ritual? Mm-hmm. I don't know that one at all. Tourniquets. Yep, y'all talked about that one. The one after that is one that actually, that is, again, not the best cover artwork, and that's a good artist, but that's not his.
I like
that one doesn't go on the resume.
I like it. Like the logo. Anyway,
but I'm kind of partial to this one. among the reunion albums, Skull Grinder.
I don't own that. I'm missing a few in their
I
collection.
don't know that one either.
As am I. This one, depending on where you look, some places listed as an album and some places listed as an EP. And it's right on the border because it's 7 songs, if I think 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, it's 7 tracks and just under 30 minutes. So it's
Rain and
borderline.
Blood. It's Rain and Blood.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly. It's like,
Yes,
if you're calling this an EP, do you call Rain and Blood an EP? I don't think so, but it's close here on this one. I blind bought this one, not within the past couple of years. I'd never heard it. I actually really like it. The music on it's very loud. It really feels like it's just, blasting right out of I'd say grooves, but this is a CD. But no, really, really loud upfront kind of sound. This one also has a lot of the first few songs kind of do the typical alternating faster parts, slower parts, but they get like to track 3 or 4, and it's more of the slower material through the second half of this. And again, that's usually the autopsy that resonates best with me is when they do slow down a little bit. So for that reason, Skull Grinder kind of stands out as one that I like a lot. What's after Skull Grinder? Because again, I've got some of these, but not all of these.
Well, there's a Puncturing the Grotesque EP, which I don't have that either.
I do not know that one either. Yeah, that's that and Headless Ritual are the 2 that I do not know by the band. Oh, then we get to Morbidity Triumphant. So yeah, the 2 Wilkinson albums. This one, when it came out, could not get into it.
Well, you have it.
Yeah, I do have it. I bought it when it came out. The local store had it. It's like, oh yeah, I'll definitely pick it up. Could not get into it at first, to be honest. Played it a few times, and I was just like, something's bugging me about this one. So I shelved it, revisited it here and there. It has slowly grown on me. I do like it now. I think I figured out the thing that puts me off of this one a little bit is it feels like Chris's vocal approach is a little different here. He focuses a lot more on that kind of the deep, I call it like the deep barking style that he uses. Yeah. That there's not as much.
Your video's not on, Hunter. Sorry, Alan.
Not?
No.
Oh, damn it.
Yep, we lost signal with you for just a second there, and we can hear you, and we've got a white square where you should be.
I didn't mean to interrupt you. Go ahead.
No, I'm glad. No, that gives Hunter a chance. I was kind of taking my time to make sure Hunter had time to reset, but yeah, we need to let him know.
Nope, your box is there, but you're not. We can hear you. Oh, wait a minute.
We got the camera icon.
Oh.
Now we got the white screen. We'll give Hunter a minute to work it out. But yeah, I think it's just Chris's vocal style, the fact that he's really leaning on that more kind of punkish death and roll type bark, which is fine, but it's just the fact that he uses it so much, right? And he's got a good vocal range, and I don't hear as much of it on here. So the album's grown on me. It sounds fantastic. It's just I wish he was using his varied vocal approach more on this one.
It's kind of the drunken. It's kind of what he's focusing on nowadays.
Yeah. I think he has gravitated towards it more and more.
It's probably easier to do.
Well, and that aspect of his vocal repertoire works best when it's mixed in with the other stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah. I like it in spurts.
Well, yeah, couldn't agree more, Hunter. Yeah.
Are those some lyrics you just recited from the Shit Fun album? Just asking.
I like it more in spurts.
In spurts?
Yeah.
Well, everybody in the chat can see you, but we can't. So
That's
I guess
the Canvas boys just texted me and said they could see me as well.
Okay.
If
folks can see you, then that's cool. Yeah, and then I think everybody was surprised at how fast this next and most recent album came out because it was just a year later. And I always get the words mixed up. Sorry, Ashes, Organs, Blood, and Crypts.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Way too much like the Tourniquets Hacksaw's title. Even the color scheme I get these 2 albums mixed up just a little bit if I don't stop and think about it because of the similarities. But this is also it's a very solid Autopsy album. Good set of songs. It's what you'd expect. Like you kind of said, Hunter, it's a little hard to get super excited for them at this point because you know exactly what you're going to get.
Yeah.
But it's going to be good. There's not going to be anything wrong with it. They're not going to. It feels like a band who's not going to mess it up at this point. But are they going to release an album that really blows everyone away somehow? Probably not either. And if you're a hardcore fan, you're going to love it. If you're not, you're probably like, yeah, okay, that's another good Autopsy album, but that's all it's going to be.
Yep.
Marty, your thoughts on any of these others that you wanted to kind of skim over?
I mean, you touched on them all well. I mean, I listened to all of them this week, and they all hold up really well. It's Autopsy, you know, and I find myself, whenever I want to listen to Autopsy, though, I'm gravitating to the old stuff. The first couple releases, I mean, that's just where I entered into it at, and I'm always excited when a new one comes out. I'll either check it out or buy it. Like I said, I have a few holes, but
that's a shit fun.
It is.
Yeah,
I have a few dead holes.
I think we've discovered their secret to songwriting here. They don't watch like a bunch of gore porn. They just stream together for a few hours while smoking pot, and the lyrics write themselves.
That's right. So, why don't we transition into talking about bands that may or may not have been influenced by Autopsy. How we hear it anyway.
Well, and so you guys still can't see me?
We can't, no. Let me blow you up. Nope.
Well,
when I blow you up, I can't see you.
This is going to make it more difficult because I pulled out a few things.
Oh, that's great. Well, let's do this, Hunter. Let's do this. I'll have Alan start and you back all the way out. Like go out and even like close StreamYard and then re-click on the link and come back in and we'll try it that way. And people in the chat can see it, but it's kind of
but for this for the purposes of what we're about to do, that would be awkward, I think. So
right on.
All right, cool. I'll be right back.
Yep. All right, Alan. Why don't you start off with your first?
Yeah. And I've got YouTube open on another tab, and Hunter does show up full screen and everything. We're there, so it's just it may just be a weird glitch in StreamYard that we're not seeing him.
It's all that extra money we're paying. It's really paying off.
Yeah, that's the
now we can
what
see
we get
Hunter.
for their feed doubling.
Yeah, I don't know that's just weird. Anyway.
Yep. But yeah. Okay, Hunter. While we can see you, absolutely, please take the lead. And who's somebody that Autopsy? What's their legacy among other bands? Who would you like to start with?
I'm going to start with this Abhorrence.
Finish action.
Yeah. The Finnish, the early Finnish stuff before it got weird and, and groovy and everything, it was all really like dark and dirty, kind of subterranean, and really kind of seemed to build off of, that first really like off of kind of Severed Survival more than anything, just that really gross interred kind of death metal, just super dark, creepy. You said the Gravedigger kind of atmosphere. That's how I feel when I listen to that Abhorrence EP.
Yep. Good old twisted Finnish riffs too. I just love it.
Oh man. Yep. Yeah, all that early stuff, man. The first Convulse record. Yeah.
Yep.
That's great.
All right, Alan, what's your first?
My first is an old favorite, Winter. Winter, gets a lot of credit for being one of those early Death-Doom kind of projects now. I think they basically decided, like, what if Autopsy just stuck to the slow stuff? And let's follow that and see where we end up. And I'm glad they did, because I love the EP, I love the album. But yeah, just some of that, this is, again, they really harken off the like Retribution for the Dead era of Autopsy. That really slow, creepy. They also work in a little bit of that psychedelia here and there, and some of the most atmospheric parts. They've got, some underneath it all, they've got some of those same kind of punky influences. It's just so very slow. It's easy to overlook that. But that's part of their sound too. So, yeah, I would be amazed.
A little bit of crust too. A little bit of crust. crust punk.
Yeah, yep. Eric Bowers pointed that out before, and he's absolutely right. That you've even got a little bit of that worked in. I would be amazed if the guys from Winter didn't sort of worship at the altar of early Autopsy. It seems like they really just kind of pick that up, take it in their own unique direction, but really have that kind of core doomy sound that Autopsy kind of helped really perfect early on.
All right,
Marty, what's your first one?
Well, I'm going to cheat a little bit, and I really think that you can't talk about an Autopsy influence and not mention Abscess. I mean, obviously, it's got Chris in it. There's Hunter's favorite at the top of his CD collection album right there. But the thing that this is shit fun era, and it shows. You got the GG Allen punk side. As this band went on, this is still in the punks thing too. But as they went on, this stuff started to get more. When you get to this, it's starting to sound more like Autopsy to me. They're a little less punk, a little bit more digging into the death metal a bit more. I haven't listened to this in any of these in ages, but
do you think they were just kind of starting to gravitate back to where they come from once they kind of got the bad taste out of their mouth?
Maybe they were starting to listen to some of the. I had to stop there for a second. I caught that. I was a little late. I was going to answer you seriously, but
the fact that you tried to play it straight made it all the more funny.
It just it clicked right there. Yeah, you saw it happen in real time when I finally got it. I'm like, oh wait a minute, fucker. Yeah, but this maybe they're starting to hear that people are missing Autopsy, and maybe that rubbed off on some of the writing here. We mentioned earlier you got Clint Bauer from the band Hex that joined the band here, so. And you got that Joe guy in here that ended up being an Autopsy later. So it's this is the cheap and easy. Oh, these guys are influenced by Autopsy. Well, it's mostly Autopsy in the band. So minus Eric Cutler. Is Danny in this?
Morales?
Yeah. I want to say yes, but
I don't think he was. I don't know if he's on all of it.
Yep, he is. He's on the first one.
Is he on Seminole Vampires?
He's on the first one.
I think he's on Vampires.
Yep. Man, if there was like a guitar representation what Autopsy sounded like, this ugly ass blue guitar with the black pick guard that he always played, that is like the physical manifestation of what Autopsy is a very nondescript, weird, cheap looking guitar that he's been playing forever. But anyway, Abscess. That was my first cheap and easy poll there.
Okay.
Hunter.
I'm going to go cheap and easy too. Nihilist. I mean, they're a stated influence. And I don't think there's any drummer that's done so good a job at mimicking Reifert's style as Nicky Anderson early on.
Yeah,
I mean, he even plays a lot of the same licks, but like they both sound more like rock drummers. And if you notice, like the Nihilist stuff and in Autopsy, like, there's not a ton of like double kick. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, it's there occasionally, but there's not a reliance on it. It's more of that swinging, kind of just live rocking with the band feeling.
Yep.
But yeah, again, like just really nasty ass, dark. Yeah. Tons of DB. Yep. Totally. Yeah. And I mean, there's a lot of punk in Nihilist, and I mean, even on Left Hand Path, it's still there.
Sure, yeah. Absolutely.
Went away on Clandestine, which got just that album's like the Time Does Not Heal of death metal albums. A lot of damn riffs on that thing.
Yeah.
But yeah. So anyway, that's my next one.
Yeah, really good call,
Alan.
All right, my next one. We'll go with a little Chicago death metal and Cyanide. Cyanide, again, is one of those kind of overlooked bands, but you look backwards and you realize that, yeah, they're another one of those kind of forefathers of the whole Death-Doom thing. And again, I think they're focusing on that Sabbathy side of Autopsy quite a bit, which again, it's the side of Autopsy that, you know, I gravitate towards more. And I gravitate towards these first two Cyanide albums for the same reason. You know, just very good, heavy, slow death metal. Not afraid to, you know, have those Sabbath influences come out at a time where it wasn't popular to do so. You know, these are coming out, you know, especially the second one. You're getting again into that window of time where death metal bands were in that arms race you mentioned before, Hunter. Who can play the most jazz licks? Who can, you know, come up, you know, with, you know, the most obtuse time signatures? Not Cyanide. They said, fuck all of that, and let's just keep it, you know, very simple, very heavy, very brutal.
Cro-Magnon.
And yeah, very Cro-Magnon. That's a great way to put it, Marty. And it's and they're very effective at it. You know, I enjoyed both the early Cyanide stuff is great at that. Later stuff, I don't know all their catalog. The ones I've heard, it feels like, you know, they lost the bottom end a little bit. They kind of, you know, get a little bit more into a, you know, straightforward death metal. They're still good at it. But for me, I really do appreciate the early stuff where they were really not afraid to keep it in low gear the whole time. So I'd say, you know, Cyanide owed a nod to Autopsy as well.
Cool pick.
I'm cheating again. members of Autopsy, so it's not really fair, but you can't really say that this doesn't sound like Autopsy a little bit. The Ravenous. This is a super group. It's got Chris on drums and vocals. You've got Killjoy on vocals. Danny Lilker. I don't remember who the guitar players were on here. It looks like members of Necrophagia are on this. You got Killjoy. Clint Bauer's on this. Danny's on this. It's just a smorgasbord of people are on this thing here. But yeah, again, it's a band that assembled paying homage to Autopsy, I think. Did you guys ever check this stuff out?
Yeah, the first one.
I think I heard it back when it came out. I had completely forgotten about that until you showed it, to be honest.
I have not.
I remember your interview from Maniacs.
Was it Maniacs? Yeah.
Yeah, but like I didn't end up keeping it. It just didn't.
It's good. They're good. I just never. I mean, grabbing these to show were the first time these CDs have been touched, and since I've gotten them, since they were sent as promos. So, I mean, it was good. Yeah, but there you go. No, I promise. Everything else I'm going to show is not involved with Chris at all. So, no more cheating.
It's all Danny Corrales cover bands from now on.
Right. Yes. All right.
This is a little bit of a stretch, but I can make a case for
Oh, that was I was going to try to make that same case.
I would have never thought of that.
Yeah.
Yep.
Really? I'd have to think about that.
Their death metal side is and I remember Renata saying in I think it was an interview with Chris Dick and Requiem when they were already Trial of the Bow, but they were talking about making that jump, and he said that his two favorite bands at the time were Autopsy and Pink Floyd. And I hadn't thought about that in a long time, and when I was thinking about doing this, I went back and listened. I mean, I listened to this record, you know, pretty often, you know, at least once a year. And yeah, like the heavy stuff on it. It's got some Autopsy in there. Fair amount, actually.
Huh.
Really atmospheric and dark and ugly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would agree exactly. I didn't know that they had literally cited Autopsy like that before, but I was thinking along the same lines that that's the slower parts, the darker, deeper parts.
Yep. More that
similarity.
Exactly that Retribution side.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Huh. Good poll. I wouldn't have thought of that. Next time I listen, I'll have to pay a little more attention to that, I guess. Alan.
All right. since this band I like a lot. And again, they, Autopsy, we've talked about them a lot, playing the faster and slower stuff, and you get into the whole Death-Doom thing. You have bands in that niche that some of them lean more towards the doom, some of them lean more towards the death, and sometimes bands get shoved in there that are kind of odd. I think it may have been last week or Wednesday night that people were talking about it a little bit during one of the streams when we mentioned that we were going to be covering Autopsy. And some folks mentioned that, Autopsy has a big influence on Death-Doom, but I don't know if you would actually call them a Death-Doom band. I mean, you think Autopsy, you think that's a death metal band. We're really good at playing slow sometimes. I think another band that falls in that same category, and thus I'd see a connection, would be Asphyx.
I almost pulled out the Rack.
I reached for the beginning of the Asphyx section, and this is the one that slid off the shelf. So I'm like, sure, I'm going to roll with it. But because Asphyx, obviously, very good at playing that slower stuff. Looking in hindsight, they get credited with really helping establish that Death-Doom style. But are they a Death-Doom band? No, they're just a slow death metal band. I think that's where most people would be comfortable categorizing them. And so, once again, they have that slower side of Autopsy highlighted here, and they do it really well. The Asphyx, like Autopsy, they can play faster songs. They can play, the much more, fearsome stuff, and they do it well when they do. But, for me, Asphyx, what makes them kind of special is the fact that they're not afraid to gear it down and make it slower, which is something that most death metal bands just don't do very often. So, Asphyx, I've been slowly getting to know more and more of their catalog, and I'm always impressed with how good they are at that stuff. So
there's a spot, the self-titled album. Oh, that's one I just doesn't leave the Rack ever. I mean, it's a straight up doom album. It's very
the Rack. I see what you did there.
The Rack is one of my favorite death, right up there with Sinister and Autopsy.
Yeah,
the Rack is just a speaker crushing album.
Oh man,
you turn it up, it's like it just lifts those cones.
Yeah. With both Asphyx and Autopsy, it's kind of weird because with both of them, I've worked through their catalogs. Like I've started at each end and moved towards the center because I knew the early Autopsy, then I hopped back in later in the reunion and had to fill in the middle. I'm having to do the same thing with Asphyx, so I don't know if I've even heard the self-titled album yet. That may still be in that.
You
little
might want to
chunk
spin it before you to pull the trigger on it, and then God Cries. It's got Theo Lumens, their original singer, back. It's good. I like it, but it's Van Drunen. I mean, you want to little comparisons to Autopsy. Van Drunen is in the same realm of Sickness vocally, but just different, a different approach to it. Both, have been copied forever, and especially the new realm of old OSDM really loves Van Drunen's voice. There's so many bands. Skeletal Remains.
We can't hold that against him. It's a great voice.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great voice, but it's you could tell where they're getting it from. Like, I know you listen to a lot of Asphyx or Hail of Bullets or whatever the fuck,
For sure.
All right, I guess.
All right, Marty, you promised something that was not directly on the Autopsy family tree. What you got?
This is my favorite album by this band. It's their debut, and it's on Peaceville. So I guess it's a family. It's somewhat family related. They're on the same label, right? Dark Throne, Soulside Journey.
Oh, nice.
This album is fantastic, and I've always heard, especially in the mid-pace section of the heaviness and the death metal, you can tell they listen to a lot of Autopsy, and it shows. I love the black metal Dark Throne, don't get me wrong, but I wanted another album, at least one more album in this realm, and it wasn't Goat Lord. You listen to the rehearsals that were Goat Lord, man, that shit just kind of sucks. There's some interesting things here and there, but there's a reason they didn't finish it. Right. There's a reason. Good. Is this Tanner? Hey, Tanner, what's up? Accidental Suicide would have been a great pick. I didn't even think of that. Grade 1 from Wisconsin. Cheers, man. Hope you're feeling better.
Hey, Tanner. What's up, buddy?
So yeah, Dark Throne, Soulside Journey. They just had there's a dark, evil nature to the riffs that always reminded me a bit of Autopsy. And is it super knock you over the head apparent? No, but it's there. It's there because there isn't a ton of blasting on here. A lot of mid-range stuff, and that was kind of the realm that Autopsy lived in too. So, yep.
Hell yeah.
Soul
That's
Side Journey
interesting. Yeah. The next time I play that, I'm going to listen to it from that lens. I've always had trouble connecting with that album. I'll be very honest.
I love it.
I don't know
It's their
why,
best.
but it's
Their best.
never really stuck with me. But I go back to it from time to time, and the next time I'm going to kind of listen to it with that particular mentality. Sometimes that's all it takes is looking at an album a little bit differently, and it'll make sense. Not to go off on a complete tangent, but Hunter, you and Jeff really got me over the hump on Blizzard Beasts when you did the episode on that one, because I had never really gotten into that album. And as soon as you guys said, they toured with Morbid Angel a whole lot leading up to that, and it starts to have a bit more of a Morbid Angel vibe to it, I was just like, oh, wait a second. And went back and played. I'm just like, oh, now this album makes sense to me. I enjoy that album a lot more now that I've kind of looked at it from a completely different angle, which I had never made that connection. It might never would have if y'all hadn't spelled it out for me using, short words with only a few syllables that I could understand. So yeah, I'm going to do that with Dark. I'm going to see spin Dark Throne and see if thinking of it more from that kind of Autopsy-ish vein maybe helps it break through the ice a little.
All right, check it out. I hope you come around on that album because it's awesome. It's a great album.
I love it too.
Yeah, I mean, even if it was a one and done album, it was great for the time. I think it's kind of overlooked as the classic death metal album that it is. I mean, people focus so much on the black metal, the Unholy Trinity albums.
Oh yeah. It's the outlier in that early catalog. Yeah. Yeah. And Hunter, it looks like, I'm not the only person that finally got Blizzard Beasts thanks to y'all.
Awesome.
Cheers, Wade.
All right, Hunter, what's your next one?
This band immediately came to mind. Couldn't decide on an album, so I just picked the one in between my two favorites. So this is Rune Magic.
Oh, nice.
Darkness, Death-Doom. They're pretty much sworn to the nasty, slow, heavy, super, super dark death metal. I don't know that Autopsy is an influence, but I can't imagine that they're not. That's just, they traffic in that. I thought about Requiem, which is probably my favorite, and then I thought about Envenom. Envenom's almost like a Doom record in a lot of ways. Jeff described it as like a satanic Melvins record. But yeah, I think Darkness, Death-Doom does it the best and the most Autopsy-ish.
All right, Ellen.
Very cool. Let's see. Yeah, this next band, I think, again, it's more the darker parts of it that come through. And I think this one also feels a little bit of a gap in the timeline that we pointed out before. Immolation have cited Autopsy as an influence. And again, you hear it again. It's the darkness of the material. It's, leaning into, that, deeper side of it. Immolation, isn't doing, the Sabbathy thing quite so much, of course. But Immolation and a band that Marty called dibs on that he hasn't shown just yet, but probably will soon. There were some death metal bands like Immolation and their contemporaries, in a way, they feel like sort of, I'll use the phrase second wave death metal, maybe. They weren't there right at the beginning, or at least they weren't up on the album stage. Maybe they were starting to break through. But yet, like this one comes out, here and after 95-ish, I think. We were sort of mentioning before. That starts to feel like a little bit of a... It's not, death metal's heyday. We'll put it that way. But you started to have some bands that were eking out of the shadows, including this. Immolation had made the one album years before. Yes, I know that. But, at this point, Immolation really starts, to get it in gear. And, these were bands that, would have heard those first wave death metal bands, from the late 80s, and had a chance to be influenced by the Autopsy demos and the, Slowly We Rot from Obituary, and start to work some of that into their sound when they started making their albums, a few years later. So I think that's where maybe you start to see some of the early influence of Autopsy. About the time Autopsy is wrapping up shop and saying, whatever, we're going to go do something else now. I think if they'd stuck around just a year or two more, they might have recognized that, hey, wait, there are some bands that get what we're doing that are now starting to come up among the next batch of death metal bands. Emanations got, hints of that in their sound, and they do it quite well. So they've cited Autopsy as an influence, and they're obviously not a clone band or anything, but I can see where they delved out parts of that and made it their own.
All right. Well, we're going to go Sweden, and this is a big-time Autopsy influence, Murder Squad.
Yeah.
This is the albums, I can't read that font, Unsane, Insane, and Mentally Deranged, and Ravenous Murderous. So who's in this band, you ask? It's a supergroup. We've got Jörgen Sandström on bass, who is, of course, in Grave in the heyday of that band, and the Project Hate. Bunch of other stuff. You got Maddie Karki from Dismember and Carnage on vocals. You got Ulf Senderlund from Morbid and Entombed on guitar, and Peter Schwarzwind on drums, who was in Entombed for a minute, wasn't he? I believe so, or later Entombed. Niflheim, Face Down, Regurgitate, Merciless, bunch of bands. So yeah, and this is basically the spiritual successor. They're channeling the Autopsy big time. It's sleazy, slower, has the same kind of slithering, kind of gross death metal vibe and spirit to it. It's really good. In fact, 3-Man, that was the Entombs label, put this one out on Candle. The other one's on Pavement. Good old Pavement. But yeah, check out Murder Squad. If you like Matt Karki on vocals, you're going to like this one. If you like Autopsy, you're going to like this one. Definitely in the same wheelhouse. And they don't hide it. Or Dark Throne, you have to maybe hunt for the Autopsy influence. Murder Squad, it's right on their Battle West. For sure. Hunter.
All right, this is my last one.
I've got three more.
Disma.
Uh-huh.
Love
that is such a crushing record.
Dude,
it's just fucking crushing.
I pretty much will only listen to it on my stereo and at deafening volumes because it is just the heaviest thing ever. Yep. Nathan from Canvas and the other 8 bands that were in together turned me up. This was a record that I didn't really know about when it came out. I knew, I've been an Incantation fan for years. I knew Funebrarum, but Disma just kind of came out of nowhere for me, and he played it for me, and it just absolutely laid waste to everything. They do, talking about D beats, they do this slow D beat, and it's like just, you know what I'm talking about, Marty, and it's just like the heaviest shit ever.
Yeah.
But I don't think they would there's no way that Autopsy didn't have something to do with their sound. It's just ratcheted up about 1,800%. But yeah, it's just anybody that's listening that's into super, super heavy death metal that doesn't know this, it's like a kind of a more varied and slightly more creative kind of version of the first 2 Incantation records.
It's a lot less murky. The first Onward to Golgotha is just one of those albums. It's just so evil sounding and weird. It's unsettling, and I hated it the first time I heard it. I'm like, what the fuck is up with this production? But now I wouldn't want it any other way. So it's like so evil. Yeah. I don't know if that was the sound they wanted when they went in. I think that's just what they got. Yeah. And it worked in their favor,
Totally. Yeah, Mortal Throne's pretty murky.
It is.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Anyway, that's so that's what I got.
All right. Alan.
See, I've just got 2 left, so I'll do them pretty quick here also, and then we'll let Marty wrap them up. Another sort of early pioneering death metal band that it has cited Autopsy as an influence, was Deicide. This just has, all the early stuff on one nice little set. But Deicide, hailed Autopsy as something that, had an impact on them. So that definitely is worth pointing out. And the last one, another band that cited them, a Swedish one this time, Dismember. Also always cited Autopsy as being one of the bands that had a huge impact on them in their formative years. So between this and the Nihilist Entomb that Hunter showed earlier, I mean, how different could the whole Swedish scene have been without Autopsy? What would Swedish death metal have sounded like without Chris's impact on 2 of the really big bands that helped make that scene explode right there at the turn of the decade? Yeah. Again, it's one of those weird what if other universe questions that you just what would it sound like? I have no idea. Would they have gone the whole HM2 direction? Would that never have happened? I don't know. It's crazy. But yeah, there we go. That's my list. So Marty, which ones would you like to show here?
Well, this was I talked to John. Well, in Diabolical Conquest in particular. This is one of my favorite incantation albums. Got Daniel Corchado from the Chasm on vocals.
Hell yeah.
And he really brought it, trying to emulate the Craig Pillard style. He got there with the deepness, the depth of his voice, but it sounded just different. But especially the last song, Into Infinite Twilight. It's a doomy song. There's a lot of Autopsy riffs on here. When I interviewed John during this era, I don't know if it was for the Resound magazine or for Worm Gear or for Maniacs. I don't know. It was
for Maniacs.
Was it?
Yeah.
I told him I heard a lot of Autopsy in that song especially, and he's like, dude, he said, that's a total compliment. He's like, I completely, without shame, try to rip off Autopsy riffs all the time. He's like, they're one of my favorite bands, and if Autopsy is creeping through some of these songs, it's intentional and great. I'm glad you found it, type of thing. I don't remember the quote exactly, but he was just like, oh, hell yeah. He saluted, and it really is evident on this album in particular. It's always there. There's just a, incantation. John is quite a riff merchant. He's like the Iommi of death metal. He's really good at writing riffs. He's really good at being incantation. But yeah, this is a favorite for sure, and I hear a lot of Autopsy on that for sure. I'm gonna pick 2 newer bands. A lot of people are talking about these guys. This is Undergang from the Netherlands. I can't read it. It's red ink on black, and my eyes are old and decrepit, and it's dark in here because, darkness is slimming. This Undergang, I mean, they're about as low tuned as you can go. Doomy death metal. There's a fun spirit in the writing of this stuff. I really like the sickness of it. I think that's where the slow, doomy, heavy death metal. Simon's right. The whole Denmark scene owes everything to Autopsy and Incantation, 100%. And these guys are the ones that I think are on most people's lips as far as in favor of. I don't have all their stuff, but what I have is fun and enjoyable and very much Autopsy. And here's another band. It's a little bit bigger right now, a younger band, Necrot. Hear a little bit of Autopsy in this stuff too. And it's because they don't really go to the blast beat all the time. They're fine being patient. It's, mid-paced, quicker D-beat type stuff. Old school. There's an old school vibe to this Necrot stuff. And I think it's probably why they kind of rose to the top. A, they tour their asses off. And B, they, aren't falling into the polluted OSDM thing. They're just writing good old spirited death metal, which means they write riffs. They're not relying on the sound. They're relying on riffs and songs, which is Autopsy 101. So yeah, Necrot. Which one was this? This is Blood Offerings. Good one. And that's my stack of stuff.
Frump, that would have been a good inclusion. I didn't think.
Frump, good one.
Coffins. Yep.
I got about 15 coffin records on vinyl that I could have shown, but yeah. Mulder, yep. Mulder, another newer band. I have a CD of theirs. I'm not real familiar with it, so I didn't pull it. All sorts of stuff we could have pulled, but this is where we landed.
Yeah, yeah.
Well,
Fester, I've heard that name, but I don't know Anatonia's music. Maybe Hunter.
They're
Marty.
Japanese. They're good. They're good. Really doomy death metal, sick kind of stuff. Yeah.
Okay, sounds like my kind of thing.
So that's it. Autopsy.
Yeah, and Mike, thanks for jumping in here. Glad you got your power back. Sounds like y'all got more snow than we did over here in South Carolina. But yep, good to see Mike. If folks haven't watched it, Mike was kind enough to do a review of the new Halo Effect album that came out today for us on Heavy Metallurgy. Fantastic review. He gave really good insights into that album, and it's a very fun listen.
It's a good album.
Go check out his review and check out the album too if you like that style. It's quite fun. So thank you to Mike for doing the review for us.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And
in closing, I've got one last question. If we're not keeping Hunter up too late, but to kind of just put a bow on all
better
this.
than I expected.
Well, we kind of formatted it this way. So
Hunter's, not, he often has to get up very early for those who don't know. So we don't want to keep him up super late, be accommodating to his schedule. But in closing, where do y'all think Autopsy kind of stands among the ranks of, death metal royalty? Or are they, one of those absolute top tier bands that, 5 death metal bands you must hear to, be true? Were they always underappreciated? Were they a second tier band? We're not trying to rank bands here or anything, but where do they kind of fit into death metal's legacy? Especially, we can limit it to the US to make it a little bit easier, maybe.
Marty?
Oh, you want me to go first? I will. I think that Autopsy should rank much higher than they do. I think when it comes to a unique voice, the Autopsy sound is completely, truly their own. I can't think of any bands that came before them that sounded like them. And yeah, there's bands like Murder Squad that are kind of ripping off the sound, but it isn't the same. It isn't the same. It just isn't the same. And the fact that they've gone for so many years and they've maintained and nurtured their sound all these years, and they're still putting out quality records. They've had 0 missteps. Is the new stuff as good as their old stuff? Probably not. Maybe it is. I mean, it's Autopsy. It sounds like an Autopsy record. I think a lot of people look at more popular bands as, look at Morbid Angel. They look at, bands that came, Cannibal Corpse.
Cannibal, yeah.
I mean, Cannibal Corpse they're the AC/DC of death metal. They just are. And, anything for Obituary. Another example of a band that they have a couple of really great records. And I say this and people think I'm an idiot. Obituary bores the shit out of me. They just do. But they've remained consistent, but they've put out some stinkers in their catalog, in my opinion. In Autopsy, they haven't. And even though they sound the same, they mix it up. They got punk. They've got, doom. They got stoner doom. They've got death metal. They got so many different styles operating within their construct that it keeps it interesting to me. Because, this album's a little bit more punky than the last one. Or, this one's a doomy, like the Headless, this one. Headless Ritual. This one struck me as a pretty doomy record. There's variety there. Bands like Obituary, who are at the top of the food chain in people's opinions, they've really struggled to put anything out. The self-titled later in their career was really good. And their newest one is pretty good too. But Cause of Death, Slowly We Rot, maybe the Incomplete, and you're good with Obituary. Whereas you can buy other Autopsy records and be entertained. You know what I mean? I don't know. What do you guys think? Hunter?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I think they should be given way more credit.
Here it is. Here it comes.
People
are going to start hurling hot garbage at me here. It's fine. It's fine.
But I think that we sort of proved the point tonight. How far-reaching their legacy is. Like What would Swedish death metal sound like without Autopsy, as Alan asked? And they've just influenced so many bands and so many different scenes. And like you said, they're still going and they're still making relevant music. I mean, and they do have a lot. And to your point, Marty, like they have a lot going on in their music. You know, I think people think, oh, Autopsy, like a slow, dirty death metal band, but like there's a lot going on. You know, it's really talented players and they write great songs. For me, they're absolutely top tier. There's nothing like Autopsy.
There you go.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
Tanner says you look amazing with a winter beard. Yes.
Handsome bastard, you.
Yeah, he is a handsome bastard.
He is. I told him that not long ago.
Yeah.
I saw a picture of him. It's like, Jesus. He photographs well.
He does photograph well. Alan.
Yeah. It's just something that popped to mind, today or yesterday. Or something like, yeah, where do they kind of stand? Because it's one of those names, when you say the name, lots and lots of people, immediately like, oh yeah, and we've saw that reaction here in the chat over the past few minutes, that, they're really hailed by a ton of people as a favorite, but at the same time, you don't hear them come up, in general conversations about death metal quite as fast. It's the bands that y'all have named that are always, sort of considered the top tier: Cannibal, Obituary, Deicide, Death, and eventually somebody mentions Autopsy and everybody, quickly, raises their hand in support. But it does seem that they get maybe put, a tier lower than they should. And I think Jonathan made a really, really good observation about this in the chat just a couple of minutes ago. I think the, Shit Fun album did knock Autopsy's reputation a bit because it does come off as just a little... There's a silliness to it. There's a just, ew, you're just being so blatantly gross, haha, kind of dorky association with it. As we all said tonight, it's not necessarily a horrible album. There's stuff on it that we all like. But that album, and especially the fact that they made that and then disappear for 15 years, that it was kind of a lot, for a lot of people, that was their last impression of Autopsy, was that they were, I would not say joke band, that's the wrong phrase, but they kind of went out on this note of like, we're just screwing around. And death metal is something that a lot of people take, incredibly seriously, sometimes too seriously. And I think maybe that, has been something Autopsy's always had to kind of, fight back uphill against. Even though, like you said earlier, Marty, they've now been back together much longer than they were together in their original run. And they've made a steady stream of, very solid albums. But I think for a lot of folks, there's that image of that face with that turd in its mouth. And that for a lot of people are just like, oh, whatever, haha, maybe.
Some of us say $6. Hell yes, that's coming home with me.
Yeah, but yeah, I think that just maybe, that and the fact that you do have, this big chunk of time where they weren't part of the scene as Autopsy. Yes, we've, acknowledged, Abscess and various other projects. They were still around, but Autopsy itself wasn't around. And I think Jonathan's got a good point that maybe that combination of things is why Autopsy doesn't get automatically mentioned alongside some of those other, big name, top tier death metal icons. But I agree with y'all. They probably should be. They should be right there on that same tier. What they did was different than those bands. They had, uniqueness. They tried some different things along the way. And yeah, they had a huge impact on a lot of bands that came down the pipe later on. So that would be my take on it.
Right on. Well, that's it. Autopsy. Yay.
That is it.
All in approval. And
Hunter, thank you so much for staying up past your normal bedtime to chat with us tonight. We really do appreciate you going out of your way for this.
You're the best, and we love having you on, and we love you. Cheers. Thank you so much.
I love you guys, and it's always an honor and a privilege to come on.
What have you got coming up in 2025? Wide open, baby. Anything can happen. Anything on the books coming sooner that you would like to pimp out?
A lot of shows. I think they've all been announced, but Agalloch playing Northwest Terrorfest in May. We're going to be main support for Emperor in 2 dates in California.
Yep.
Nice.
Doing Fortress Fest in England.
Yeah, don't play whatever you don't play Michigan. Whatever. That'd be dumb.
Take that up with Emperor's people, man.
Yeah.
And then we're playing Mexico and Brazil in September. So that'll be cool. Yeah, I've never been to South America, so I'm looking forward to that.
That'll be huge.
We hopefully Canvas will get the death metal record out, the Festerium record. Hopefully the Plague Psalm Gorging Shade split will be out, and hopefully the Sculptured will finally come out. It's pretty much done. Just a couple of things. So yeah, but yeah, a lot of stuff going on.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Alan, let's talk metal Tuesday. What you got coming?
I don't know. I've got a bunch of videos recorded, so I kind of just got to pick which one I want to put up first.
You're so prepared.
Have
I not rubbed off on you yet? The procrastination is the mother of invention. Come on.
Yeah. No, I've done a nice little follow-up on our discussion about the French heavy metal scene that we did last week with Daniel Eckeroth. So I might put that one up since it's kind of relevant to what we talked about recently. Mm-hmm. But I've also got some with some really cool demo tracks that I think folks will enjoy from some old forgotten US bands. I've got one that features multiple bands with the same name for different singles and stuff, just kind of a fun one. So we'll see. But yeah, Tuesday morning, as always, there'll be something over on Let's Talk Metal for folks to have some fun with.
Show notes. Mm-hmm. We got a review Monday. Alan did. I don't remember the name of the band. It's a weird name. Starts with an O.
It's actually a Death-Doom band. We could have mentioned them perhaps tonight. It's a Spanish band named Onerophagus. And
rolls right off the tongue.
Yeah, it's their third album. It means Dream Devourer, which is a pretty cool name for a Death-Doom band. Yeah, it's their third album. It actually got a quick mention on Banger TV's new January releases video that came out today. So if folks want a quick preview, they can watch that. And if they want a more in-depth review, they can check it out Monday night here on Heavy Metallurgy.
Wednesday night, Album Club. Bellanos, a Bellanos album. Can't remember the name of it. You have to go watch. I don't remember. I haven't done my homework yet. So that's coming up on Friday. What's Friday?
Let's see. Next Friday, Melanie from Melanie Loves Death Metal and S. Craig Zoller will both be joining us. Craig has requested that we all sit down and figure out what our top 5 metal albums of all time are. And we're going to break them down in detail.
How is that?
5.
Anyway, I'm not going to say anything. How is that even conceivable? Top 5.
Craig's got his list in pretty good shape.
He does.
I've got my list in pretty good shape. Yep. I haven't checked in with Melanie, but I'm sure she's working on it.
I'll figure it out.
It will be a fun discussion. It's always very fun to have.
That's heavy lifting, man. I'm glad I wasn't asked.
It'll change weekly, so I mean, it's like one of those. It'll be fun.
Yeah, you see, I do have to disagree with you there, Marty. This is a list that does not change for me. There's only one of the 5 that's in any debate whatsoever. My top 4 albums of heavy metal have been locked in for a very long time, and it does not shift. So number 5, there's a little bit of a weighing which one is 5 and which one is not quite there. But
I mean, what do you pick? Is it do you factor in nostalgia? I mean, it could be a Kiss record. It could be
your 4 favorite heavy metal albums of all time.
Fuck. We'll find out what I land on Friday, everybody. Join us. Yes. And
it'll be fun.
It'll be fun. We'll have a great time. Great discussion. You'll hear a lot of singing from Zoller, a lot of air guitaring and whatever.
Oh, we better. We look forward to it.
Right.
If he doesn't, we'll be disappointed.
But yep, go check out Hunter's activities, I think there's links in the description. Go check out the Let's Talk Metal. Go check out the Heavy Metallurgy Discord server. It's a popping over there. They're busy chatting all day long. And Halloween will be on there. You're damn right, Jeff.
Simon has some advice.
I've got way more Drawing the Light albums than any human should have. It's so stupid. The collector, that band worked its way into my collector scum gene, and I hate myself. Anyway, cheers, everyone. You rule. Thank you so much for joining us tonight, Hunter. Always the best. Do not jump. We're going to chit chat for a minute. But cheers, everyone. We will see you next week.
Everybody stay warm and stay safe.
There you go.